This work session, regular meeting of the Township Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of this work session, regular meeting of the Township Council of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by the posting on the bulletin board at the municipal complex, a list of dates annually, indicating that this work session regular meeting would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 6 o'clock p.m. on Thursday, November 8th, 2012. In addition, a copy of this notice has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. Councilman Wright's not here, which will be given by Councilman Ted Chase. He's next in order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather here today as members of the Township Council, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen.
Amen. Madam Clerk, please call the roll of the council.
Councilman Chase.
Here.
Councilwoman Francois. Deputy Mayor Kramer.
Here.
Mayor Levine.
Here.
Councilman Prasad.
Here.
Councilman Regan. Councilwoman Sherman.
Here.
Councilman Vasanella.
Here.
Councilman Wright.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Mr. Mayor, because we don't have cameras here, and because of the hurricane, et cetera, you and I had discussed altering the agenda, and I move that we, actually, you had the best suggestion. What was your suggestion?
I'll go to a few items. Standing committee reports, minutes, warrants, and then ordinance introductions and consent.
Great. I so moved.
Okay. That's to amend the agenda. There a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. And then at 7 o'clock, when people are here, we'll have public discussion and start hearing from people on the Hurricane Sandy and Storm Athena items. So we're going to now do number 9, standing committee reports. So first we have administration. From administration? Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Francois is not here. We did postpone a meeting that was scheduled for last week. So actually there is nothing to report at this point.
Okay, thank you. And number 2, financial oversight. Deputy Mayor Kramer?
We had already discussed the fire prevention positions at the last meeting. We also had a discussion at the financial oversight meeting about the sewage authority. We were split as to whether to proceed on that or not. I think in a soon upcoming meeting, we should probably have a council discussion item on that and decide. Probably the issue to be decided would be, we'd be willing to do a study that would just look at the finances of it to see if that's enough reason to go forward and do more of a study, kind of a bit of a piecemeal thing. There are others who might disagree with that, but that was my opinion, not the opinion of the committee. The committee was split as to whether to move forward or not. And then the other item was Route 27 water, the southern part of town. We discussed 3 different options, and since then I've come up with a 4th option, which I've discussed with our township engineer, as to various ways to to go about it. The reason why it's important is that South Brunswick, who is interested in helping us out, would need to do a study to see what the effect would be on them, and it would cost them $4,500 to do such a study. And they would not want to pay for that. They were asking us to pay for that. So I wouldn't want to, my opinion, and the opinion of the committee was, we wouldn't want to pay them to do that unless there was some kind of consensus on council that we would consider some of the options to go forward. In other words, if all of council or the majority of council said, no matter what, I don't want to go forward with that project, it wouldn't make sense to spend $4,500 on doing that study. Since some council members aren't here, that should probably also be a future discussion item. So that is what we discussed at Financial Oversight.
Okay. Do you want that on a specific agenda, or you'll let us?
Well, I would say this year, those two items, Sewage Authority, there's only 2 more meetings left in the year, Sewage Authority and the water in the southern part of town. I don't know how busy the agendas are for those meetings. Not busy. Okay, let's have them the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. And public safety? Councilman Vasanella?
Mayor, we have not met since the last, I believe it was a couple meetings ago when I gave a report. I believe we'll be meeting, we were going to try to meet in November since we had some things to finish up on before the end of the year, but with the delay of the storm, we may just stick to our early December meeting. But either way, we'll meet before the year's end and bring a report back to council then.
Okay, thank you. And we have land use. Anyone for that one?
We usually
Councilman
rely on
Chase.
Councilman Wright to
Okay.
report on that. We had the last land use committee meeting was taken up essentially entirely with a meeting from a representative of YMCA's about the feasibility of building a YMCA in the town, and indeed some discussion of possible sites. And apparently there's a wide variety of ways in which we might do this, with differing degrees of township involvement, both financial and managerial. So I didn't take notes, so I can't give you any further details on this, and something I'd really like to see this laid out on paper in greater detail before we discuss it further. But of course this is something that was recommended in the recreation needs study, that we have a facility including an indoor pool, but also involving gym facilities and a wide range of other facilities. And the guy, unfortunately I can't remember his name, from the YMCA, felt that the best possible location in terms of visibility would be corner of Amwell and DeMott, but then that poses a problem of parking. So we also thought about a number of other possible sites.
Okay, thank you. And the final one is Public Works.
Yes.
Councilman Chase?
The Public Works Committee met with Township Engineer Tom Zelenek on October 31. There has been some confusion as to whether the proposed Walgreens at Route 27 and Route 518 should be authorized to tap into the South Brunswick water main and become a South Brunswick customer. The committee recommends that it should be so authorized, but with a clause that if Franklin extends its line to this site within 5 years after they begin to operate, they must switch to our line and become a Franklin customer. The Homeowners Association of the Margaret Drive area that's surrounding Buffer Drive has requested that the township take over the maintenance of their detention basin since many homeowners are refusing to pay their share of this expense. The township sometimes enters into an agreement with a developer to maintain the detention basins of a new development. Other times it is given over to the Homeowners Association to do it. This is the first time that we've been asked to take over an existing basin from a Homeowners Association. So we should, and there's a, we normally calculate a fee as the maintenance expenses for 26 years. So we should investigate how to obtain a comparable fee, not to be paid all at once, but more immediately than over 26 years, but probably also with no sunset. I don't know, Tom, whether you had an idea that they would, even after 26 years, they should pay some fee.
Well, I think actually the fee is, you pay the fee all up front. It's calculated on what the cost would be for the maintenance over that many years, right?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking it might be easier to sell it to the homeowners if they didn't pay the totally up front. A developer, of course, can pay it up front and then put the cost into selling the house, into the price of the houses, but the homeowners may not want to pay 26 years worth all at once.
Correct. If it were a new basin that was just being built in a development, we would collect the entire amount up front from the developer. I guess there could be a mechanism to split it up, make it a 5-year payment or something in this instance.
Yeah, well, I guess we'd probably have to calculate what we think it is and reasonably, and then we can decide whether or not we want to enter into an agreement with the Homeowners Association for them to pay us.
Right.
Well, and it's more than the Homeowners Association, because we'd have to have a mechanism whereby we could collect by way of a lien on the property from people who don't pay their share, which was the Homeowners Association's problem.
So I just want to stop for a second. So really what we're talking about here, and this becomes a problem, is that we're really talking about assuming the homeowner's collection responsibility, because that's really what we'll be doing. And the problem is this:
we won't get the money.
Yeah, except for here's the problem. So I don't know how many houses there are there, Tom. How many?
84.
84 houses. So you'll have 5 or 6 people who won't pay the fees, and then I'll come here and I'll say, we have the house on number 3 Margaret Court. They owe us $800. I need you to authorize the township attorney to foreclose.
So is there no other way, for instance, when the tax bill goes out, that there's a special tax put on these people so that they must pay it?
No, I don't think that it doesn't fall. I don't think it falls under the category of a local assessment, because a local assessment is only something you can do before the construction, and this was constructed privately. So I'm not quite sure how we could do it. We could enter into an agreement with them that says, if you pay us, we'll maintain your thing every year, but if they don't pay us, then we won't maintain it.
So what are our options if they stop paying us and it's not maintained, and then it becomes a problem?
Well, our options are, if it becomes a hazard, we probably, under the property maintenance code, can go in and maintain it and assess them for the cost of it.
And then you're back to the same collection issue.
Yeah, well, but the difference is that on the assessment, what we would do is we would put a lien. We would put it on as a tax lien. So as a tax lien, because we could collect those property maintenance assessments, right, just like we would collect taxes, and if they don't pay their taxes, they could sell the tax sale certificates get sold and we get paid. So I mean, that's the other backstop we have. I would rather do that, because collecting money that way is something, A, we're set up to do, and B, is a much more efficient process for doing it because we sell the tax sale certificates and ultimately we always get paid because they're tax liens. That would make much more sense to do it kind of in that way. And here's my suggestion: is that you enter into an agreement that they pay you every year to go maintain it, and if they don't pay you, you don't do it, and if they don't maintain it, then you go in. Then we do it. But I wouldn't assume their collection responsibilities and step in for their homeowners association without. That doesn't make any sense.
Are you saying we don't want to be in that business?
No, we don't, because as a practical matter, as I just laid it out for you, that you know what will happen, and even my advice to you would be it's not worth $10,000 or $15,000 to collect $900, and that's what the homeowners association is going through now.
Right. So a tax lien is...
No, yeah, tax lien we're set up to collect. We just
right.
It's just $500 more on their taxes if they don't pay their taxes.
Well, I guess that's what I was thinking of, but I called it on your tax bill, but that's fine.
But the process you suggest is essentially triggered by not maintaining the detention basin. Now, if 79 out of 84 people pay, do the 5 people not paying trigger our not maintaining the detention basin? Do we have to go through that process in order to get to the process you describe, which, if we can get to it, is clearly the way to do it?
The answer is yes, and the problem here is that this is a fundamental problem when you have homeowners associations and they have common elements to maintain. Some homeowners associations have the problem that they have 30% of their houses are in foreclosure and nobody's paying those.
Yeah.
The problem is that, remember, there's a lot of detention basins in town.
Yes.
Tom will tell you that once you do this, be prepared to do it in other places because everybody has 5 or 10% of the people in their homeowners association who stop paying their dues, pay late, don't always pay, and they have to chase them. If we step in, we're going to become the collection agent for all of the homeowners associations.
I'm sorry, I just need some... You're suggesting we don't step in or we do step in?
No, I'm suggesting that you do it in a way. I don't have a problem with...
We step in using the method you suggest.
Correct,
All
which is if you would like us to maintain your homeowners association, your detention basin, here's what we can do.
Yeah.
Tom says
it
costs
per year.
$3,500 a year.
That's fine.
You pay us, we maintain it. If you don't pay us, we don't.
Okay, I think we agree.
And maybe we save them money doing it that way.
If I'm a homeowner who does pay, I'm going to resent people who don't pay, which is actually the start of the whole problem.
Well, that is a problem, and the problem is that for you to solve that problem, you have to assume the obligations of the homeowners association, which is what, if you say what we'll do is we'll maintain this and we'll charge the homeowners and then collect from them, and we'll take the burden of collecting from them, you now have assumed the obligations of the homeowners. And between you and I, then every homeowners association will say to you, good, we don't have to do this anymore. These are now municipal services.
Right.
Now, if I extrapolate on that, theoretically could, just pick them out of the air, Society Hill come and say, oh, detention base, why don't you cut all my lawn?
Right.
You're in the maintenance business anyway. And
yeah.
And also going back, could we put a lien on, let's see, we were to go ahead, on the association as opposed to the individual homeowners? And would that make sense?
Well, the problem is this: you lien the common elements, which is the detention basin.
Right.
You then foreclose, and what do you get? Title to the detention basin,
okay.
Which, by the way, they would probably love. But as a practical matter, what happens with homeowners associations, and I don't want to make it such a dire thing, to the extent that they have liens, they go through this, those are liens on property. So someday those properties get sold, they get paid back their liens. So it does happen. It's not that they never get paid because the properties ultimately get turned over, they get sold. Even if they go into foreclosure, their liens, they get sold.
Right.
I don't remember.
So we could, if we decide to go ahead, we could theoretically hear from dozens of others on...
It sets a precedent, yes.
Well, that was our concern.
And that was the
there was no way we were going to do this, for one, realizing that everyone else would come in. So it has to be done in a way that the township does not assume that that responsibility.
Or we charge for it. Or we charge.
Well, charging isn't I don't think charging is the problem. The problem is bearing the cost of non-collection.
But if we do it as a tax assessment, then...
Well, you can only do it, you have to use we don't have the ability to just say to somebody, all right, well, we'll provide this service and we'll give you an extra tax for it, because there's only a limited number of ways you can do that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that under the maintenance provision as a penalty, if they were failing to maintain it and it affected the public health, we could go in and maintain it and then charge for it. But, the problem with that is that, and that's a way to do it, but as Councilman Chase says, that presumes that we've now let it get to a point of disrepair.
Well, but how about if we do it this way, and maybe this is already what you've suggested. There's, 84 homes, you said?
I think
So, all right, we'll just use that number. So let's say 74 are paying and 10 aren't. Could we charge not only the share to those people, but the fee of the work that we're doing to those 10 people? So they are not just paying their share, and we're splitting that fee amongst everyone, but we are burdening those who don't pay with that extra cost.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we could pick and choose amongst homeowners
Based on whether they're paying or not.
based on whether they're paying or not.
Okay, because that would be extra incentive.
Right.
Then we would
Okay.
become the property manager on
Yeah.
that, and that's not
Right.
what we're
And
looking
then
at.
you're collecting again.
Right.
How about if we contract for a property manager for many of these, but do it on a basis that we're more than breaking even?
Are we going to get into the property management business?
Well, we'd be on the contracting business, which we do. We have a contractor sitting right here with us. That would be you.
Oh, I was going to say. But the difference is this, though, and here's what the difference is. You contract with me, but you don't say, well, you know what we'll do? We'll pay Lou to do people's house closings, to give them a better rate, because we can. That's
Right.
That's
That's
a different
kind of-
story.
I know. Yeah.
Just some
You're now
ideas.
getting into the
I have no idea.
private property maintenance. Should we do that?
I see.
Now, going back to the beginning, if we do nothing, they have to maintain it like they always have, and it's their business. And if they don't,
If they don't,
just
we
step
go
in.
in under the health code and maintain it, and then put a lien on the property.
I'm willing to hear more. I think I'm hearing maybe it's better to leave well enough alone.
I think the other thing that you need to consider is I spoke with the Homeowners Association president. The issue that they have is their inability to collect from the homeowners. He's having a difficult time collecting their annual Homeowners Association fees. Their association fees don't only pay for the maintenance of the detention basin, but they also pay for the common area taxes that are assessed by the town. So one of the things that you're looking to do, if you were to relieve the Homeowners Association of this detention basin responsibility, is they don't want to make annual payments. They wanted to get out from under it completely. And that's where the issue lies here. And they have the ability, correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, they have the ability to bring a foreclosure action against the homeowner for failure to pay their association.
They do.
So they have a legal mechanism in place here for those that don't pay their bill. They just are choosing not to do that at this time, and they're looking to get out from under the annual collection business.
Correct.
So let them go through that process and see where it takes
Yeah.
them.
It's part of property management, is it not? Considered part of property management.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
when times are good, it's all part of their doing business. We should have as little involvement as possible.
Maybe they need to hire a property manager. They're trying to do it on the cheap.
Yes.
And
You're right.
Because
they,
it's just,
That would suggest
That, yes.
It sounds as if
Case.
what we, the township, should do is write them a letter which really lays out this discussion as the reasons why, no, the township is not going to take over their detention basin. It's their problem.
Well, maybe we can say it a
Perhaps
little
not in
nicer,
quite
but yeah.
those words, but
I would agree with that and see where that goes.
I think that manager's eloquent in his writing, so I'll put the proper tense.
Yeah.
I think I can draft a letter to the homeowners association president on this.
Okay, so I guess that's a consensus to have
you
Mr.
can
Moore.
throw in a good deal of on advice of counsel.
To lay it off on the lawyer.
Sure, yeah.
He knows how to do that too. by the
Oh,
way.
that counts. Okay.
I do know how to do that as well.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
I can continue.
Yes, Councilman Chase.
Next one is worse. A request was received from Regency at Quailbrook that the township patch their private streets. The letter was written by Hill and Wallach, LLP. It cites an ordinance requiring this. This might be the first of many such letters. Tom will investigate further.
Yeah, Tom and I have actually, we looked at the ordinance. I actually spoke to their attorney today. As part of whatever the approvals were and the done at the time, we didn't take over their roads as public roads, but we agreed to do some routine maintenance that we do on other roads, and they agreed to do major the major maintenance. And I wrote to their attorney, and I spoke to her today and told her that Tom had this is the first notice we had that there was a problem. He now has a list. They'll be put on the list with all our other streets and
They will be treated as equal streets, to our streets.
And we'll go.
Not for repaving, but for patching.
For patching.
Patching,
Right.
Correct.
As we treat our roads that are similar, that's how we'll treat their road.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sidewalks on Beverly Avenue at Easton Avenue with handicapped cuts, cuts for a wheelchair to go down to off the curb, need repair. This should be the county's responsibility, but they refuse to meet new ADA standards for such curb slopes. I think Tom said this might involve extending the right-of-way. And they want the township to do this. So Tom will investigate how to minimize our expense and maximize the county's participation. But this will be an item for the 2013 budget if we have to put some money into it. And Tom gave us a preliminary list of streets for repaving in 2013, so council members and the public are encouraged to submit requests for repaving, and these will be checked out by Public Works and prioritized by the committee. And then just to touch on our discussion of the Route 27 water main, since Councilman Deputy Mayor Kramer has already brought this up, and I have to say what I have written down here was really Tom's recommendations. We should give Route 27 residents the same service as other residents if we can afford it. If we replace the line from Route 518 to its end near Promenade Boulevard, which is what we've been talking about, or cheaper ways of solving the problem, with another $70,000, we could connect the line to the Franklin Township main at Highlands Boulevard. We could then provide our water at less expense to the township and to these customers, and probably greater profit to the township, instead of buying from South Brunswick at $4.75 per 1,000 gallons and reselling to our residents. Another option is to provide a booster pump, which would increase the pressure from the present 20 pounds per square inch. For a booster pump for each customer, this might be cheaper than any of the other ways of doing it. But I'd say, we currently have this request into South Brunswick, which essentially we've had in since August, and they haven't responded yet. But I guess they're asking for the funding for a small study, but we will certainly have to do a full engineering study to see what the cost would be for this alternative that we have proposed of building a new line along that stretch of 27 where the border is Old Road, and but connecting it to the South Brunswick main at both ends, and thus supplying those customers directly from South Brunswick. The water is coming from South Brunswick anyway at present. And then there would have to be tunneling under Route 27 and other parts to connect up our residents to the South Brunswick main. And I can't see how this could cost any less than half the $3.3 million that has been quoted for the complete replacement, and I should think it would be approaching at least 2/3 of this. And at some point then we should also get both a cost estimate and a sense of acceptability to the public of the suggestion of providing individual booster pumps, which might actually be cheaper than the other solutions.
And we're going to get some feedback as to the reality of that.
Actually, I had said that we should discuss this at a future meeting, and the engineer reminded me that he was here to help us with this discussion tonight, and it has been dragging, so we should probably discuss it. There are essentially 4 options. 1, do nothing. 2, spend roughly $3.3 million to replace all the pipes and provide these people with water such as the rest of us are used to. They are currently getting water that is legally adequate, but they are not, for instance, able to take showers upstairs and things like that because there's just not adequate water pressure. Plus, they are not getting the fire service. So we could, for $3.3 million, replace all the pipes. For roughly half that amount, we could replace half the pipes and use South Brunswick's water burrowing under Route 27, giving up the water, those people, to South Brunswick. So let's call that $1.6 million. And then there's the option that I had presented to Mr. Zelnick, which is what you what Mr. Chase presented. For half those people that can connect to South Brunswick, let them. The other half, the Old Road half, we do the engineering to figure out the size of the booster pump, and they would need an expansion tank. So basically, in-home installations for each of these homes, they would then have the pressure that most of us are used to. The one disadvantage to that latter part is those people with booster pumps in that area would not get fire hydrant service. The other ones where we would replace pipe, the ones where we get water from South Brunswick, we could also bring over water for fire hydrant. So those are the 4 options. In the option of we provide booster pumps, we could do it 2 ways, or several ways. We could either do the engineering and let them do it if they want to, or not do it if they don't want to at their cost. We could pay the first $1,000. We could pay the last $1,000. So we could enter into some kind of cost sharing. So I do think that Mr. Zelnick is here to explain any of that further. If anyone has any questions, I hope I explained it adequately. But I do think we should decide tonight and decide whether, if we're going to include South Brunswick in any of this, should we encourage the manager to pay them the $4,500 so they can do the engineering?
Are we asking questions at this point? Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Thank you. Is this area the only area in Franklin Township that does not have fire hydrants? Are there other areas in Franklin Township?
This area that has a water service is the only area that has a water service and not sufficient fire protection.
But there are other places in town that need
There are other
pumper
places
trucks
in
instead
town
of
Right.
where there
fire
is no
hydrants.
water service.
Right.
Okay,
That
but what I'm getting to is the amount of fire service protection that this area has is similar to the same fire protection service that other areas in the township have, so that we are not singling them out. They're being covered by what the law says is adequate, and so if we're, in my view, if we're feeling that they're under an increased threat, then every other area in this township that does not have that fire service is also under a similar threat, and we need to provide that to everybody. So let's make it clear they're not being singled out.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
So my argument is not about the fire service. As I've said this here before, Mr. Chase and I both do not have fire hydrants available to us. I'm fortunate I have a canal across the road, so there's infinite water available to me, though Mr. Chase does not have that. So my argument is not on the fire hydrant part. And that fourth option would provide fire hydrants to all but the old road area. But to me, that's a side benefit. To me, they have, as I was discussing with Mr. Zelnick, they have European water. And they're kind of in the rock, between the rock and the hard place. If they lived where I lived, they would dig a well, and they would still not have fire service, but they would have good water pressure. If they lived in the parts of town that have city water, then they would have both. So they're kind of in an unfortunate situation. And what then you might, if you, I don't want to be judgmental in any way, an option available to you or your vote might be, well, let's go with the one where they install pumps and they pay all of it. We do the engineering, which is just a few bucks, because it's, one job for everyone, so it would be a minimal cost to us. And we provide them with this option, or we could vote to extend them some money to help them with that.
If I might just make sure that people understand where I'm coming from, and I think that's the option I would vote for. We're talking about $3 million potentially, and this is for 70 homes. And my heart goes out to everybody that has this problem, but the problem really is they can't take a shower on the second floor. And that's $3 million to allow 70 homes to have showers on the second floor. Definitely, if my home, I'd be in here advocating for it. All I'm saying is we need to find a way to do this without that expenditure, if possible, and look at all of the options before we make a decision.
Okay. Councilman Chase?
Oh, well, one item I drove up Route 27 the other day, and I counted there are 17 fire hydrants in this stretch going as far as Alston Road, where the connection is to South Brunswick. And the presence of those fire hydrants makes the point. This is a line that was installed with full service, with enough pressure for it to be worth having hydrants there to give fire protection. And what has happened over the years, and we know this is over 40 years old, we don't know how much over, is that the quality of the line has gone downhill, and it can no longer withstand the pressure that other parts of the township have. We have allowed the service condition to degrade. It's just as if we had a road that had gotten in very bad shape, and you looked at it and said, there's only 6 houses on that road. Why should we pay the money to repave that road for only 6 houses? I mean, that's exactly the equivalent that you're suggesting.
I don't suggest that is an equivalent situation. This is not life-threatening, anything that they have there. I mean, an inadequate road could indeed cause accidents, and people could get hurt. And I don't want to argue those issues, but I don't see these as equivalent issues.
So, Mayor?
Councilman Vasanelli?
So, for me, that's an important item. The specific condition relevant to similar aged infrastructure in other parts of town? And is it something that's deteriorating, but like I think Councilwoman Sherman is pointing out, deteriorating, but not in a way that will create a problem until it hits the point to where it's actually broken, where that's the other part of it. Are we able to monitor something well enough to know, okay, in 2.5 years, maybe we need to do some of this repair work? I don't know if Councilman Chase has any engineering information, but...
The engineer right here.
Well, he was the one who was stressing the point, so I thought maybe he knew something that we didn't. But I guess our engineer could be specific as possible with those two questions, so we
can't predict how long it's going to go or how long it's going to take to deteriorate past that point.
But in relation to
we can keep
the same type of systems in other areas of town, how does it relate? Are other ones, have we done these type of preventive maintenance? Because I don't recall that.
No, there was a major project probably about 10, 15 years ago where they relined all the pipes down Hamilton Street.
It was actually done through the Levitt neighborhood. You had McAfee Road was relined, and that neighborhood off Burger Street, that was done probably about 10 years ago.
And is that similar to what is in question now, relining the pipes?
No. The problem with this line is when it was put in, the pipe was never put in a bed of stone. It was laid directly on the bedrock out there, and that's... If we line it, the cracks are still just going to keep coming. It needs to be constructed properly.
And there's no way to monitor certain stress points to know when this is going to reach a point, or it just ruptures in the moment?
I mean, you can't predict where it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. If we could, we would go in and do the repairs beforehand.
So do we know that no other lengths of that type of piping is laid the same way in the town? I mean, how do we know that it was done specifically there and done everywhere else the way that would make it last have a little more integrity?
We've dug up pretty much everywhere in town, and that is the only area where there is no stone bed around the pipe.
Was that our contract, by the way, that put that? I mean,
you're talking about a contract 40 years ago.
Okay, so the bottom line is, would you consider it an immediate danger to the water flow for that area?
Immediate danger? No.
All right. So,
but this is not a project that we can do, like start tomorrow and have it done a week from now. This is a project that has a year before it kicks into the ground.
So if it wasn't for the other issues that came up from the homeowners, would we normally be looking to do this in anywhere else in town with the same infrastructure?
There isn't another place in town right now that has this situation.
Okay.
Motion to do it a certain way, or is this required?
Okay. Other discussion on this item?
But how we read the ordinance.
Okay.
Well,
anything else for Public Works?
Well, Mayor, before we closed on...
Councilman Wright, just go ahead.
I'm reading Councilman Wright into the discussion we've been having.
Okay. We'll bear with you a moment, I believe.
We pay to replace this across 27.
You could just read it on me.
Are you from this area?
No,
Just for the audience's sake, we started a little bit earlier. The only thing we did was standing committee reports, and in a moment we're going to go back to the top of the agenda with all our reports, and public discussion will come up very shortly, just so everyone knows.
It came in relative to the topic that was under discussion. I was informed the meeting
Okay.
started at 7 o'clock.
Okay. And we're just doing committee reports, people telling us what happened within their committees. It may have hit on anything that coincidentally. But when I get to public discussion, that's going to be when anyone can speak of any topic, and if it's this or anything else, we're glad to hear about it.
And we just, at this point, put this on as a discussion item at the next meeting.
Okay.
Because then later in this meeting, but we were in the midst of finishing our committee reports, and I'm all for discussing it, but I think it's throwing everything out of...
Well, I'm not sure I mean, we've already started the discussion. Why put it off and then come back to it? We might hold off a decision until the public gets to speak, because it appears there's at least 2 people here from that area, so I'm happy to do that. The reason why I don't want to hold it to another meeting is Mr. Zelnick is here. He will not be available in the next meeting in November, so now we're pushing it off to December, and this has dragged on quite a bit of time.
Okay, so then we could just do it. It seemed like we were in a pause mode for Councilman Wright to review it, which is fine, but let's continue then.
And he appears to have reviewed it.
Okay, Councilman Wright, did you want to?
If Councilman Chase, I'm sorry, it comes down to a basic principle for me. Now, if there's going to be a problem where these residents, this water issue is going to be a problem, and we can help solve the issue, then let's solve the issue. I mean, if we're going to sit here and drag on forever and basically not help the people, I mean, if it's a money deal, I understand, but at the same time, you don't pay me the money. And if the residents need the help, that's what we're here for, and it's to help them. Now, whether we hook it up to our system, which is our water, and charge them XYZ, or we get New Brunswick to say, well, South Brunswick, this is what we're going to do or willing to do. I mean, come on. At this particular point, help the residents. That's what they pay taxes for. Help them.
Okay. Would you like to hear from the public and then bring it back? What's the council pleasure on this? Oh, Councilman Chase, please.
Can I just say, I think at this moment, the only real question is whether to authorize paying $4,500 to South Brunswick to do the study that they want to do. And if they conclude on the basis of that study that they don't want to do that proposal, well, then that's one less proposal to consider. If they conclude on the basis of that study that they would agree to this, then at that point, for one thing, we're going to have a full engineering study of what the cost would be to us. That will be the time to resume discussion and, really bite the bullet over it one way or the other. But I would hope that we can go ahead we can authorize paying the $4,500 to South Brunswick to do that study.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
No,
that is in order.
Okay, Councilwoman. Oh, let me ask. That was a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilwoman Sherman.
I thought the pressure pumps were also considered a viable option.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've done the analysis on the pressure pumps. I think to decide now to just do the South Brunswick analysis without authorizing the analysis of the pressure pumps, to me, is just not getting all the information you need to make a decision. You need to know what both options give you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Deputy Mayor Kramer.
We know we can do the pressure pumps.
And do we know the cost?
That's what's the cost?
The cost was under $5,000 per house.
So
5,000. I'm sorry.
Times 70.
Times
70 times 5,000.
No, it would not be all 70 houses. We'd have to look at who's on what side of the street.
The pressure pumps being just for the old road area is what he's talking about. And I think there's roughly half the houses.
I don't know why we are not considering all of the houses, but why is that not a viable option?
But that would still, if I may,
Mayor Kramer, please.
That would still, what I think, the proposal is that half the houses would go to New Brunswick Water.
South Brunswick.
South Brunswick Water, which would require South Brunswick to do this study for $4,500, and half the houses get pumps. So the pumps technically is a viable and legally is a viable option.
And
so
why
I don't
is
think
it not an option for the other houses?
If I may comment, we should certainly study whether pressure pumps would be cheaper than tunneling under Route 27 for the other houses. So in that sense, that
Yes,
would
it
be
would
an
be.
option for the other houses.
And
That would
Pardon
be.
me.
That would be.
Yeah.
Mr. Zelnick, the answer to Councilwoman Sherman.
Is
I
there any
apologize.
reason why pressure pumps are not being considered for all 70 houses and not just the ones on Old Road?
The pressure pump issue just came up
Understood.
about 2 weeks ago. So,
Understood. So
one of the reasons for the pressure pumps just in that area was to have the other houses go over to South Brunswick would give more flow available to get to those houses that get the pressure pumps.
So the pressure, the pressure pumps, can we just, because I've heard two different versions here. Pressure pumps may be able to be used for all the homes.
No.
I'm not trying, is that yes or no? I mean, it's pretty.
For all the homes, we'd have to look into
No,
the
okay,
supply
I
portion
understand.
of it.
That's why I said may. We may be able to use them.
Yes.
Okay,
for all
and
the homes.
we're talking about whatever it is, but substantially less than even the cheaper of the two other options put on the table. So if I'm understanding Councilwoman Sherman right, if I do, I agree with her. Make sure I'm understanding her so we can get some clarity. The idea of allocating money for a study, which would take a much different and substantially more expensive approach, not that I think not that she and I know not that I'm against that, but we still don't know.
right.
Can we have all of them done with the pumps, which from what I understand, engineering-wise, would be the simplest, and if so, how much is it? And just from quick analysis, you're talking, a couple $100,000 instead of a couple million. So in that respect, I think it would be ridiculous. Not that we want to wait a lot longer, but we've waited so long, we have what looks like a viable option, even so it came in late in the game. Let's make sure that, and we can make that decision at the next meeting. Is there a reason we couldn't get that information by the next meeting from you or whoever in town, and then we can make a decision?
It's going to take more than 2 weeks to get that.
All right, so maybe then December, we can make a decision the beginning of December?
I would have to talk to the consultant that we have that does this, based on the storm and everything that's happened. I don't know what their forces are like right now and what projects they're doing in those areas. So this...
All right, well, come back to us with your best estimate, I guess. That's the only thing we can ask for right now.
Deputy
then go
Mayor
from there.
Kramer.
Yeah, so the issue of the way I came up with the pressure pump idea is if we took half the load off by putting half the houses to New Brunswick, that would free up flow. Flow is different than pressure, though they are related. That would free up flow and allow those houses to use pressure pumps. The problem is if everyone's using pressure pumps, the possibility might be that you draw too much on that pipe and you put negative pressure on the pipe, which could damage it. That's going to take a study from an engineering firm, and that's going to cost money too. So,
And one thing, even if we were... South Brunswick wants that study done, even if we're just putting one or two services over to them. They want to look into it, is what I've been informed.
So if we want to provide any relief to these people at all, we're going to have to do at least one, maybe both studies. If we don't want to do anything, we can just go along our business. That's kind of like
right,
what
let's
Councilman
do
Chase
both.
said at
Right.
the beginning.
and a slightly related thing, which I think we also have to get to tonight, is the Walgreens situation.
Yes.
Which one?
Councilman Chase brought up in his report.
But there's a motion on the floor.
Right, that's
Okay.
good
So
point.
do you want to?
I would like to amend the motion if I can.
Okay,
if I'll-
yeah. Go ahead,
yeah.
Councilwoman
I would
Sherman.
like to amend the motion to allow for both studies. $4,500 for South Brunswick study, and whatever is some idea of the cost, if so we can do both of them. I don't know how we do that where we don't have the number for the pressure pumps.
I could get the number on that study by the end of the week, by the end of next week.
Well,
Thursday.
but the idea we want to do them simultaneously, can council via this motion give authority if it's 8,500 or less via by way of the amendment to the motion, and then both studies can just go simultaneously as part of the motion? I ask Councilwoman Sherman to consider if there's a problem with that study, that we come back to the drawing board before we initiate the other one.
The study would be done by a consultant that we have an annual contract with, so there is no authorization for any amount from the council. They've already authorized it up to $100,000. If you want to put a number on for not to exceed, to come back with, that could be done. It's more just giving direction to get the consultant in to look into it.
Good suggestion.
Is really all that's needed. There's no further beyond that.
I will second Councilwoman Sherman's amendment.
Can they just accept that?
Did you want to put a price dollar just as a safety net?
Yeah.
It was moved.
As long as the mover and second accept it, then you can just consider it amended and go forward.
Ms. McCarthy, who moved and seconded that?
He moved
Councilman
it.
Wright and
Councilman Chase and Councilman Wright.
Okay, do you accept those amendments? Then we don't have to.
Yeah, I'd accept that amendment. We do 2 studies rather than 1, where council needs to be informed.
Councilman Wright, you're okay with the amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So the, instead of me repeating it, do you want to give like a sentence? Because we do have people here who might be interested in what each of those studies would show.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, you want to give a sentence or two on what the $4,500 study would provide us
Well, it would.
from South Brunswick?
Tom, perhaps you can tell better than
The
I.
$4,500 study that South Brunswick is going to do is going to give them the answer to whether they want to take over this service area from us or not.
Okay.
Is this an engineering study, a financial study, or both?
I think it's both.
Both, okay.
My understanding is it's both, and it's for South Brunswick to be able to determine whether it is financially a viable thing for them to do, and whether and to allow their council to make a similar decision that our council is currently mulling over.
And Mr. Zelnick, the second one which was proposed, how would you encapsulate that?
Just authorize Township engineer to conduct engineering study to see if pressure pumps can be put in the service area.
Okay, and for everyone's edification, this is along Route 27, the border with South Brunswick in the Little Rocky Hill area of town. Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Do I need a roll call?
You do not.
Okay. If nothing else, all in favor of that motion as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Okay, very good. Good.
No.
Well thought out discussion.
Now the Walgreens.
Okay, yeah. Deputy Mayor,
So I'll start it with a motion to authorize Walgreens and that, what's the name of the plaza?
The Marcus.
The Market?
The Marketplace.
The Marketplace to
Okay.
obtain their water from South Brunswick.
The motion should be that we are giving up the service area of the marketplace to South Brunswick Water.
There you go. That's what I said.
However, if we extend a township water line to and beyond that point, within 5 years of their opening up the Walgreens, they then have to switch over to our service.
Right?
That was
our
what
thought process,
the committee
yes.
Okay.
recommended.
Okay.
That's my motion now.
Okay.
Agenda.
Can you, okay.
Seconded.
I mean, I understand that was the thought process, but I think that probably requires the assent of South Brunswick, right? Because we're going to...
South Brunswick would have to agree to take over the service area from
Correct.
us.
But they would have to agree to it with the condition that 5 years from now it would come back to us if we got a new line. They'd have to agree to that condition.
Yes.
So, but, okay, then my motion is to do all we said on approval of South Brunswick.
Okay. All right.
Or that is so unless they object. Can we do it that way?
No, it doesn't really matter one way or the other. Whatever it is that you put in your motion, this is always going to be subject to South Brunswick accepting it. And if South Brunswick gets it with that condition and it's not acceptable to them, then they'll just not
Then they'll
accept
come
it.
back and say, no, we don't want that condition in there.
Okay. All right. So that was the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Other? Okay. Ms. no, we don't need it. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried.
And just, that was kind of thrown in quickly. That whole, the Walgreens market issue was, this was a commercial development that was going in that was being held up by inadequate water for fire protection. And essentially, we're going to give up, I think it worked out to $660 of water revenue a month, but gain a much larger taxable revenue every month, and this water issue was holding it up. So I think, and most of council was aware of that, so that's why this, even though we're giving up a little, we're getting a lot more. I think that's why we passed it.
Right. And I think discussion in committee was you want to be business friendly as possible, too. And this is on the corner of Route 27 and 518.
Correct.
They're going in. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Bornlocker, in advance for doing these. Okay, we're actually...
Yeah, you're still on...
No, we're actually under Public Works.
Still on public... Okay. So I wanted to go back. I asked the manager a question. We both thought we should probably get the attorney's comment on it now. Going back to the sidewalk issue at Beverly, at Easton Avenue there. So there's two questions. Actually, I guess there's three, which I thought were decided a long, long time ago, but I guess I was mistaken by what I was told. The sidewalks that are slanted down, basically to be used as safety, like bicycles or whatever, which commonly use these sidewalks the length of Easton Avenue. If they were put in at whatever point, let's just say 10, 12 years ago, and they need to be repaired because concrete is broken up, they need to be repaired. If indeed there was any changes to zoning or handicap laws in the interim, if you're repairing a piece of sidewalk, a sloped piece of sidewalk, would you be required to completely redo it if some standards have changed, if you're doing a repair?
I'm not. When we talk about sloped sidewalks, are we talking about handicap sidewalks?
Yeah, talking about handicap. Go ahead.
Can I just clarify that? The issue here is there are ADA ramps at Beverly and Easton which need to be repaired.
Mm-hmm.
The question is now the county is stating that though they are no longer in compliance with current ADA regulations and they need to be completely reconstructed. I think the councilman's question here is if they were installed and need repair, do they now need to be brought to current ADA compliance?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Has there been something changed in the last decade relevant to the slope?
To public facilities? Sure.
No.
What do you mean?
It's sidewalks.
Have the standards changed?
Yes.
I'd have to ask Tom on that, but yeah, I think that they have.
Yes, and the federal government's making a very big push on this.
Yeah.
Most of the handicap ramps that were installed more than 10 years ago are not in compliance with the current ADA codes.
And I have to tell you that even if, for instance, if we had handicap ramps here in the municipal building that didn't meet that code and that they weren't damaged and they didn't need repair, we could very well be forced to make them compliant. We're a public facility.
So then I guess the next two questions would be, although I thought it was spelled out clearly, who is required for the maintenance of a sidewalk on a county road?
The county.
Okay. So is there a reason if this is something that's going on 1 year and after 6 months of being suggested there was a resolution coming forward to contract out the work, either we're going to do the work or the county will be held accountable to do the work. So since we have a paper trail going back to the beginning of this year, is there a reason that we cannot send a legal letter to the county expressing our desire for them to do it voluntarily, or we'll take the action necessary? So I guess the question would be to Lou.
Should we threaten to sue the county?
Is there other ways that you deal with a situation that obviously is at a standstill since it's 7-8 months now?
Well, the county's a government like we're a government. I'm assuming if we write the county and say to them, you should fix this, they'll probably say, we will, based upon availability of resources and in accordance with our budget. And, we have, I think that's what they'll, the answer is I don't think that we could there's anything we can do to force them to do it.
So can we request then that they make the appropriate, whatever they need to do so people are aware then that is not a safe bicycle route as...
Well, that's different. Compliant, whether it's compliant and whether it's safe are two completely different things. Remember, they were built at a time when they were determined to be compliant, and they may in fact be safe. That's different than whether or not they actually...
No, they're crumbled. They're completely crumbled. So there's no question as whether or not they're safe. I'm asking, can we ask the county if they're not financially in a position, going to what you said, they're going to either fix it or they're going to say, we don't have the money. So if they save them the money, can we request then that it is properly whatever marked or closed off then so that dangerous situation ceases to exist?
Mr. Vornlocker?
I'd just like to add one point here. These are sidewalks, and as by definition under the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Code, sidewalks are for pedestrians, not bicyclists. And while I recognize the hazards of riding a bicycle on Easton Avenue, particularly in that area, these are not part of our Bikeways master plan. They're not part of a bike path. They are sidewalks and therefore are intended for pedestrians. And while I understand the councilman's concern as far as the safety, and I certainly have seen these and don't dispute that they're in a state of disrepair, I want to caution that we don't want to pursue that, I don't believe, as far as a hazard for bicyclists, because it's not an intended use of that particular sidewalk.
So, then just for pedestrian or wheelchair use, then
absolutely.
You could take the word
right.
bicycle. I didn't want to throw off the whole discussion. Fact is, it should not be used in its present form, plain and simple. If they're not going to fix it, can we request that they simply mark it as it should be detoured, not used, whatever?
So, Councilman Vasanello, do you want us to authorize our manager, Mr. Vornlocker, to communicate with the county about this?
Well, my understanding is there's been a lot of communication already, and they simply flatly have refused. So at this point, since we're going eight months or so, I would like just our attorney to address it as described.
I think contrary to what Mr. Raynone said, and I don't disagree with him, the county has taken the position that sidewalks are not their responsibility. That while it may be a public right-of-way, that it's not their responsibility to maintain sidewalks, nor do they maintain sidewalks anywhere in Somerset County, and therefore they don't intend to make those necessary repairs.
Well, let's take a quick look at that. If they're right, then it's our responsibility.
So
it would either be ours or theirs.
So and that's fine. I didn't want the conversation to get off track to bicycles, but either they do it or we do it.
Remember what we're dealing with here is that there's two different issues here. We could tomorrow pass an ordinance that made the responsibility for maintaining sidewalks that of the adjoining property owner. We could do that. There's a law that allows us to do that, and the county could do that too. That's different than if somebody walks on the sidewalk and trips and falls, whether or not the town is responsible or the residential property owner, because the law says the residential property owner is not responsible. So when we talk about liability means something in the law. We talk about a maintenance responsibility or liability. That's two different things. So I'd have to see exactly what it is that the county is saying. The county very well may say we build the sidewalks. It's the responsibility of the property owners that adjoin it or the town to maintain them. That doesn't mean that they have by doing that, they have absolved themselves from the liability as to what happens if somebody should trip and fall or fall out of a wheelchair as a result of hitting a rut in a sidewalk. So it's two different issues here. So we'll get to the bottom of it, Councilman. And the county's position is we never maintain our sidewalks. We leave it to the towns. Then council will have to make a decision.
So how quickly could we get what sounds like is the one question that you need?
Certainly in a couple of days. We can get the answer pretty quick.
How about if this, you're on Public Works, right? No, you're not.
Well, no, I am, but I'm not. I don't want to wait for this thing to come back to Public Works. It was suggested this thing had action 6-7 different times. That everything was already done. So apparently, this inquiry or feedback from Mr. Raynone needs to be done.
Yep.
So if I'd like one or two. At this point, I'd like what supposedly happened 6 months ago. If he confirms that it's the responsibility, then we move forward with whatever we have to get the county to do it. If concludes that it's not technically the responsibility, that the bid, with the resolution with the bid, with the cost, comes forward to council. If council wants to reject it, they can reject it. But this isn't a question of whether or not this needs to be done or is it a hazard. And just so people understand, this is basically one of about 15 sidewalks along a stretch of a couple miles that is used all the time, not just by local residents, but a lot by people working and patronizing our businesses on one end of Eastern Corridor, coming and going from New Brunswick. So this is a link in the chain. It's not just a sidewalk to look pretty or off being used on its own. This is it's a broken link in a chain that is a necessary requirement for the safety and continued usage of this corridor by pedestrians, handicapped people, and bicyclists, although that's not what I'm suggesting is the main focus. So
okay,
that's what I'd like to happen, Mayor, if there's no objection.
Okay, just a technical question for Attorney Mr. Raynone. If this were to come forth to us for the repair, would that have been in our capital budget? Can that just come forward as the councilman is suggesting?
Well, it depends on how you want to do it. Obviously, if you decide to do it as a capital project, you'd have to amend your capital budget to do it. I don't know, the magnitude of it, but certainly that would be the appropriate way to do it. You'd have to pass an, appropriate capital appropriation or a capital bond ordinance. You'd amend your capital budget if it's not in your budget. Correct. And you'd have to have the funds available for a down payment if that's part of it also.
There's no other places that you can legally take money for a repair.
No, you could take it out of Public Works other expenses if you had money in Public Works. I mean, if you had the money to do it, you could take it out of, if you had it budgeted someplace, you don't have to do it by a capital appropriation. You could budget the money in Public Works other expenses and do it that way.
So just to get to the end of this, is there not anywhere in any other of these budgets that something...
There's no money in the Public Works budget to do this job.
So, Mr. Zelnick, as a practical matter, let's say we make the presumption we wanted to. Would this have to wait till next spring or summer anyway, as winter's approaching?
Based on the time of year, yes.
So I'm going to offer to Councilman Vasconello, since they have to wait till next year anyway.
Well, I'm not sure why we have to wait till next year, because, unless we get an abnormally cold 6 weeks. This is a repair that was slated to be done last spring because, like I said, it's a broken link in a chain here. You're talking about having it go undone for the winter and continue in a hazardous manner. I find that, if absolutely necessary, fine, but I suggest it's not necessary. Or it may not be. That all depends on... Mr. Raynone said a few days, so if the answer comes in a few days, then we'll know what direction we're going.
Yeah, we'll look at it. I'll have somebody take a look at it tomorrow. By the beginning of next week, we'll have an answer for the township manager.
Okay.
But I'd like there to be a resolution, no matter when the work's going to be done, because there's no work to be done unless that happens, an appropriation, unless the response is positive with the county. It sounds like we'll finally get to the bottom of what was supposedly done 6 months ago, but let's try to get to it as quick as possible.
If you're... Well, the cart's way ahead of the horse here. I can give you my answer relatively quickly. If you wanted to do a capital expenditure, we'd have to have an estimate, we'd have to have a capital ordinance, and you'd have to have enough time to get it adopted between now and the end of the year. And I'm not sure that all of those things that could happen in...
Because now there's additional work. One of the things, Councilman Vasconello said that the cost estimate's already been done. That's true. The cost estimate was done on a repair that was not based on bringing this into current ADA compliance. So now there's additional work that needs to be done. And I'd also like Mr. Zilnick to explain what guidelines we would have to operate under to make concrete repairs. And there's date deadlines that are set.
Right. There's temperature requirements under DOT specs for when you can put the concrete down and curing time on it and everything. Generally, concrete people shut down Thanksgiving, and then they reopen up at the end of March.
Okay,
well,
so
if there's legalities it can't be done, that's fine. But could we get the bottom line answer and either an appropriation voted for and against if it comes down to that immediately. And then if it has to wait because of technicalities with construction, so be it. But this is 6-7 months behind schedule. So that's all I'm asking, is that we move forward as fast as technically possible.
Okay, as far as part one, Mr. Vornlocker, when you can give us, please, what it would take and cost, et cetera, you can let us know.
Sure.
Now, as far as part B, you're asking, which is to have our resolution on the next agenda, we need the council to approve that.
Or if it needs for the December...
Are we talking about a resolution expressing the sentiment of the council?
If it comes back that it's... Whatever resolution is necessary, if it comes back that you feel they're responsible, if they refuse to move on it, then whatever we need to push forward with them. If you suggest that somehow technically they're not responsible, then a resolution that spells out whatever way we have to appropriate funds, even if it can't be done until late March.
Okay, Mr. Rainone, do we need a bid, an ordinance, et cetera, to spend this money? Okay.
Well, you don't need a bid, but what you would need is if you're going to do a capital project, you're going to need a capital ordinance and an amendment to the capital budget. So that's an ordinance and a resolution. You're going to need those two things, and of course you're also going to need money for the down payment in your capital account. So you're going to need those two things plus somebody to certify that there's funds available to do that. To actually, now that's the funding source. To actually spend the money, obviously, when the time comes, you're going to need to go out to bid and you're going to need to get a contractor, and that's the second or I guess maybe third part of it. So that's what you need. So if I'm not sure what the resolution is that we would pass. The resolution I think you're suggesting is none of those things, right?
It's whatever is necessary to keep the ball rolling to the next step,
so,
relevant to what feedback
the
you
answer
get
is
the
answer is this: is that we could certainly, I'll get you the answer to your question, and then we can put together the capital ordinance. We'll figure out what it is. We'll get an estimate as to what it is, and get that prepared. My suggestion is, however, that because it would die at the end of the year, if we don't get it adopted in time, and I don't think we have enough. Anne Marie, do we have enough meetings?
She said we can.
We can introduce in December and adopt because they don't change.
Correct. So we could. So we can introduce it in December. So we can get it prepared for December then, and for introduction.
Okay. So at least then maybe early March or late March, early April, one way or the other will be done.
Okay, and if any of the committees, Finance, Public Works, want to take it up within there to flesh out any other details, that'd be fine also.
I appreciate, Mayor, you want people to be able to take a look at it, but this is, again, pretty clear-cut, something that's been lingering. People could vote how they want if and when it comes forward.
Okay, so Mr. Bornlock, info and tell us if it were to happen, when it could, on your timetable. Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else on this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a question.
Councilman Wright?
Are you in charge of sidewalks? I mean, does sidewalks come through your purview? If I wanted sidewalks on Berry Street, are you the guy that I need to come talk to?
No, if you wanted it, you talk to Warnock.
Because I've been going around in circles here, and the thing about sidewalks is that the people that live on Berry Street, if they're walking around coming out of Berry Street, the kids that go to school, they have to walk in the street in order to get to the school. So I just want to know, are you in charge of sidewalks? And right here and now, who does sidewalks? Because
if we were going to install sidewalks somewhere, council would authorize me to go and prepare plans and specs for it. Who comes up with where sidewalks should be and all?
That's us.
That would be a council decision.
Right.
Planning board.
But
no, I don't know about planning.
No, not the
Council would pick where sidewalks are. Like that sounds like a pretty poor. I have no skill set in sidewalks.
Well, presumably you
and
get.
I don't think anybody else up here does.
Yeah, this particular issue has nothing to do with adding new sidewalks, but we can put it on the agenda for Mr. Wright.
Not pertinent to.
Hold on. I said, and I asked, were you in charge of sidewalks? And if you are I know you're not physically going to do the sidewalk. You get the engineers to figure it out, and then you bid it out and all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
But what I ask is, does it come to Public Works? And if it doesn't come to Public Works, is it better to come to Public Safety, then come to the council for the work to be done? That's the question that I'm asking.
That's not really. I don't know that you want to wade into that jurisdiction, Mr. Zelnick. You do all the
It's going to come down to him anyway.
Well, it would come down to me when the decision is made that we want sidewalks in this area.
Mr. Mayor, where do we go for sidewalks?
Do you want the council to make a...
Well, CBGB sometimes provide grants money for that.
No. We're not looking at grant money. We're not doing any of that.
I would think
we need sidewalks.
Let's pick one. I would think Public Works might be the first line.
Public Works it is.
And that's with you.
Public Works it is.
Okay, then we'll ask you at that point.
Okay.
I would direct the township manager for the next Public Works agenda, that's sidewalks on Berry Street. Now, I would ask the chief of police, who knows all about Berry Street, if he would send a car around there and say, hey, this is what, the kids are walking in the street. They don't need to be walking the street because you make that turn, somebody's going to get hit. And who's going to be responsible for somebody who gets hit? Are we going to wait for grant money to be freed? Are we going to do X, Y, and Z? They need the sidewalks. I don't care who does it. Public Works, if we're going to put it on them, fine, let's do it. End of discussion.
All right, if I could just clarify something. Sidewalks historically are either installed at the cost of the developer or as a capital improvement project, which you would then, as a council, approve.
Not a problem.
In the budget process.
Not a problem.
All right. So if there is a request from a resident or a council member or whoever to have sidewalks installed in any particular neighborhood, that would be a topic for discussion at whatever council chooses as far as committees are concerned. However, it would be then investigated by the engineering department as to cost, and it would be proposed as a budget item in the capital budget for whatever, as we go towards calendar year 13 budget. So if that's the request, then that certainly can be done.
Thank you. That's what I would like done.
And Mr. Bornlocker, you'll make any requests of police as you choose in any direction, of course.
It'll be referred to the appropriate committee.
Councilman Regan.
Mr. Mayor, at the high risk of extending this conversation, I do just a point of clarification. If understanding that council would authorize and do it through the budget exercise in capital, wouldn't the homeowner then be responsible? My understanding is once sidewalks are put, homeowners' taxes are going to go up.
Well, there's
and then they are naturally responsible for keeping the maintenance of it, like the snow, shoveling it and everything, and that has always been resistance with some residents about getting sidewalks.
Sidewalks adjacent to a property owner, the property owner is required to maintain them as far as snow removal and those things. I believe, and I think Mr. Raynone can clarify this, there's two ways to install sidewalks. The township can do it at their own expense through a capital improvement project, or you can do it through an assessment to the individual property owners, and that would be, again, a council decision.
Right. That's exactly right.
That's exactly right? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going for the township because we never asked the developer to put the sidewalks there. I don't have sidewalks in front of my house, but yet if I were going to put sidewalks in front of my house, then I want them, I pay for them. But this little sidewalk here, we got a curb, we just don't have the sidewalk. And at that particular point, no. We can talk all we want about the homeowner, but if the homeowner says, I don't want to put him there, where are they going to walk? In the street?
Put it on the next agenda.
I mean, let's think about that. There are children, and they're walking in the street.
Can't we move on?
Thank you.
Yes, can we move on?
I'd just like to make the point that the children, I guess, are coming largely from the new Berry Street apartments. We could and did, as far as I know, require the construction of sidewalks in front of that building. we cannot require that developer, RPM, to build the sidewalk all the way up to wherever the sidewalk stops off Hamilton Street. Yet, the people that need the sidewalk are not primarily the abutting property owners, it's the people from the Berry Street apartments, and that is why really the township needs to build that sidewalk.
Okay. If we're done with, we're actually technically on the Public Works report. If there's none others, we can go back. What happened was we had started the meeting a little bit earlier, and the only thing we did is call to order, Pledge of Allegiance, the invocation, the roll call, and then we just did standing committee reports. So we're going to go back to the top where we were. We have not hit public discussion yet. That'll be in just a few moments. We do have agendas, associated ordinances, and resolutions by our clerk, Ms. McCarthy. Please feel free to get up, get what you like, follow along. We're at item number 5, commendations and proclamations. There was one, but we're going to hold that until the next meeting. So we come to number 6, item 6, Mayor's Report. So I will start by first handing it to our manager, Mr. Bob Hornlocker.
All right, so I just had a brief interruption there, Mr. Mayor, so I apologize.
Your speaker's on.
I'm on.
Oh, are you?
I am. We're going to have a discussion about the response to the hurricane. Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think
very
that'd be a good time.
Well, what I'd first like to do is if we could have representatives from emergency management just come up to the lectern, please. And I thought the best way to do this at this point is to kind of do it chronologically, since emergency management had the first involvement as the township dealt with Hurricane Sandy. They can give council a brief report on how we prepared for the hurricane from an emergency management standpoint and some of the issues that emergency management dealt with as they worked through the hurricane itself. So Sergeant Rizzo, who's one of our deputy emergency management coordinators, and if our emergency management coordinator could come forward as well in case council has any questions, we'll deal with that end of it first.
On an emergency management standpoint, we actually...
Still, just let me interrupt. And in addition, in your folders are a report from emergency management that you can follow along with.
I know that Gary and I began to track the storm October 22nd, which was the Monday actually before the Monday a week prior to the storm. That was when it actually came onto the radar that there was the possibility that it could strike the Northeast. The 25th, Gary and I actually met with the partners within the township, Public Works. It was a staff meeting of the LEPC, and we met at police headquarters and discussed the fact that this could have a significant impact on Franklin Township, and we developed plans as to what we were going to do in the event that it did strike. The next day, so we met with our township staff on Thursday. Friday the 26th, we met with the Somerset County Office of Emergency Management. They had a pre-planning meeting with all 21 municipalities from the county. Again, we met with our state police partners. Again, at that point, there was still probably a 40 to 50% chance that it was going to head off into the sea. We had computer models that were, I would say, 40 to 50% that it could actually take a turn, and again, we weren't quite sure where it was going to go. Right after that, we came back to headquarters and we met with all of the volunteers within the town, all the fire companies, representatives from EMS, as well as the Sewerage Authority and other appropriate authorities as we saw fit. We received who the representatives for the Emergency Operations Center would be in the event that we did have to activate. And again, we began to develop our plans as to our response from there. Again, up until even Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, there was still probably a 30% chance that it was going to go off to sea. But by the evening, all the computer models were saying that it was going to hit the Northeast area. On the 29th, which was the Monday that the storm hit, we opened up our emergency operations center around 2 o'clock. We began a partial staffing at that point. As the storm progressed, we went to a full staffing. We did declare a state of emergency on the 29th, and that was the reason we declared our own state of emergency was to put travel restrictions out there. And what we did was we actually put travel restrictions for emergencies only, and that was lifted the next day at about 3 o'clock. Prior to this meeting, again on the 24th and 25th, myself, Gary, and Patty Elliott from the Somerset County Health Department, we had spoke with the Earth House, Pillar of Fire, Zarephath, and Willow Creek. As we know, those are particular areas that would flood or need to be evacuated. And we discussed the possibility that this could have a major impact on our area. And again, we didn't know what kind of rain this was going to bring. It had the original forecast was for up to 12 inches of rain. So we discussed with them the major impact, and they all voluntarily evacuated prior to the storm. The last one to get out was the Earth House. They evacuated Monday morning. They were actually the last ones to actually reoccupy as well because they were without power. They have since gotten power back and were back in their facility since the 7th. Would you like me to get into some of the ongoing effects that we've had? Throughout the event, we had upwards of 50 roads either partially closed or completely closed. We currently still have 5 roads closed throughout the township. As we know, traffic signals at major roads were affected throughout the entire incident. Easton Avenue, Route 27 most namely. We do have traffic signals. The majority of them are up and running. However, we do still have some traffic signals that are affected by this. Throughout the event, the Franklin Township Police Department received a report of right around 150 wires down throughout the township. Again, that is from from the storm's inception to current day. And we have received reports of well over 200 trees down throughout the town. We've had building inspectors go out and start building assessments. The estimates that we have at this point, and again, this is things that were reported to us, is we have about 50 homes that were affected, and when we say affected, sustained damage, minor, major, or destroyed, these are FEMA terms, and I'll explain to you exactly what they mean in a moment. But we have about 50 plus homes that were affected, 25 homes that sustained minor damage, 5 that sustained minor damage, as well as 1 that was at this point looking like it could be destroyed. We also did have a business on Campus Drive that had its roof blow off. Currently, right now, we believe that the damage for the private portion is about $550,000. And when I said things were affected, minor damage, major damage, the way FEMA determines that is if something is destroyed, they're saying that it's a structural loss, total loss. That it's not feasible to repair it. If it has major damage, it's currently uninhabitable, but the damage can be repaired and it can be, inhabited again. If it has minor damage, they customize that as to the repairs will take less than 30 days to fix. So shingles blow off or something along those, a hole in the roof. And then an affected but habitable would be siding blows off of the house or something like that. Public Works is out there and they're doing a great job. They're clearing roads and again I've been in constant contact with Mr. Stevens and again we're estimating as to how long this is going to take, and there's still areas that we're haven't been able to get to. So right now we've estimated that we could potentially move upwards of 20,000 cubic yards of vegetative matter and debris. FEMA has come in and we've discussed this with them, and the costs are at a minimum right now of $175,000 for debris removal alone. When it comes to the police were utilized during the storm to close roads, erect barricades, and handle other storm-related calls. Additionally, after Governor Christie signed Executive Order 108, which began with the rationing of gas, we deployed officers to the gas station. Chief Roberts actually had us deploy officers to some of the business districts as well that were without power as a security measure. So we've estimated at this point that the overtime for the storm is going to be over $100,000 just in the overtime there. So, some of the public buildings have also sustained some damage. There was an outbuilding at Public Works where a portion of the roof blew off. The major damage that we've had to a public building would be SGS. A portion of the roof blew off there, and they've told us that 12 to 16 rooms have sustained water damage. And that, again, that is not only just water damage to the carpets, but the entire electrical system in an entire hallway. FEMA was in last week, and we've estimated that repair at approximately $650,000. I met with FEMA on the 4th, and we toured the township doing a preliminary damage assessment. We requested and were granted, the Office of Emergency Management requested and was granted 3 trailer loads full of water, and we've been distributing that to residents. We also received 3 pallets of ready-to-eat meals ready to eat, and we received them from Somerset County. The trailers of water were received from FEMA. The MREs were received from Somerset County. The recreation staff has been doing a great job. They've been running a warming and electronics charging center over at the community center at 505 DeMott from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. And again, they've received assistance from OEM, members of our LEPC, as well as other volunteers that we've had come forward who have gone through CERT classes through the county and wanted to assist us. To date, we've distributed approximately 7 to 8 pallets of water, which I believe they've estimated that 9 pallets of water would be about 14,000 bottles. So we've distributed a great deal of water, as well as over 600 meals, the 600 meals ready to eat. So we've been able to get a lot of that out to the residents. As you know, a federal disaster declaration was signed by President Obama. Somerset County was named in that declaration. This will allow the townships to apply to FEMA for public assistance. At this point, all of the costs that I had given you are preliminary. We still have ongoing operations. We are still receiving calls for service related to the storm that we would be allowed to submit to FEMA for possible reimbursement. So the changes or the costs that I gave you could change dramatically. Again, we do have roads that we have not been able to assess, so there could be damage to roads that we're not aware of. But at this point, the preliminary damage assessment is right around $1 million, both public and private.
Yeah. Is there any way to assess how much of that will be covered by FEMA?
FEMA, generally, when it comes to disaster declarations such as this, when it comes to the public entity, it would be a 75-25 split. They would give us 75% of approved costs, and we would be responsible for 25%.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is that what's not covered by our insurance? Do they apply the same thing?
Exactly. Anything that would be covered by insurance, we would have to put through our insurance.
Right, so it's only the uncovered costs.
Right, and again, so the repairs to the buildings and so on, that would probably not be an allowable expense through FEMA. However, our overtime, our debris removal, any emergency protective measures, any barricades that we've erected that have either gotten washed away, destroyed as a result of being hit, or just general wear and tear, that could also be covered as well.
They were all washed away, right?
I know one of the big issues is obviously electricity, and who's going to address that?
We'll work our way through, and I'll address that.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's no other questions for emergency management. We're going to move on to the Chief of Police.
Thank you for a job well done.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sergeant, Mr. Howard, thanks.
Thank you, Council, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Town Manager, and everybody here. The people that know, my name is Larry Roberts. I'm the Chief of Police here in Franklin, and I just wanted to come tonight to just say thank you to everybody. I have a lot of people I would like to thank. As everybody know, we got hit with the hurricane unfortunately, whether you're the chief from Manville, Franklin, New Brunswick, you never want to be hit with something like this. Yeah, we do have plans. We have contingencies. And when it does happen, though, the police department's the first line of defense, along with a bunch of other people I'm going to mention. And I first want to start off by thanking the men and women of the Franklin Township Police Department. From the beginning, when the storm started hitting and the calls started coming into our 911 communications center, we had double-up shifts, we had extra officers in, and we had contingency plans in place. And I'm really proud of the officers, the professionalism and the dedication that they displayed throughout this storm. We split the shifts. Every officer canceled their vacation day. We only had one officer calling sick, and that was because he got 2 impacted teeth and he had to go to the hospital. So I'm sure he really would have rather been out with the hurricane. But we answered every call. Not one call in this town went unanswered. We got calls for requests as minor as checking on somebody, as major as trees down, roads out, and everything got covered. And I'd like to report that there was not one major injury in this township due to the professionalism and the fast response. So I wanted to start with my department first and just, thank every officer for the dedication, the professionalism that they showed to this township. It shouldn't go unnoticed. Second, I would really like to thank the volunteers in this town. Fire, EMS, they stepped it up. The communication in that center and the communication between every agency is always paramount. And it was perfect this time. And I really want to thank the fire companies, all the chiefs. They came to the meetings. They stepped it up. They communicated with us. They let us know what was going on, and everything got answered. The same for the fire and the EMS. So I want to just, as the chief, thank you very much for their support through this whole storm. To all the town workers, DPW, OEM, the rec staff, a big thank you. Victor Stevens and his guys, they were awesome. Every time we had a plan in place, every time we would get a call for a downed tree, we try to keep the major thoroughfares open. Those guys were out there. They worked through the rain. They worked through the wind. They never complained. So I just want to thank Mr. Manager, Victor, Tom, and their guys, because they were awesome. And I just don't want it to go unnoticed. To Township Manager Vornlocker and the council members. I know a lot of you called in, checking with Bob or with me, and a lot of you came in on your own time, came into the 911 center, saw what was going on, observed everything. I just want to thank you for taking the time. As you know, I have an open door policy that lets you see the plan that we put in effect, and this way you get a first-hand view of what it's like carrying it out. And I think you saw how hard everybody worked and the time they put in and the successes that were seen here in Franklin, even though what we were up against. I still blame the town manager for this coming because he's manager for 2 weeks and he has to bring this with him. But, I especially want to thank Bob because he stood there like a trooper, side by side with me. Didn't go home, stayed there throughout the time. He was communicating, with, I know, council members on his end, his brother at the county, and leading up to the storm, we met every hour, to go over this. My wife actually joked that I talked to Bob Warnlocker more than I did her. And but the plan was flawless. We had a plan for everything, and we just wanted to make sure that the whole town was covered and there was no stone uncovered. And Bob, I want to thank you for all your support. But last and not least, the citizens of this township. I want to thank them because as the storm hit, we got flooded with calls. And people would say to the 911 dispatchers, I know the storm's here, but I just want to take a chance and go to the food store. At that point, most of them were closed. I want to find one open. And we told them, no, please stay home. Don't go out on the roads. You don't know about the trees. You don't know how strong the wind's going to be. And everybody listened. We got no stranded cars, no wires down on cars, because the citizens in this town listened. And I just want to thank them. They make our jobs easier. And as a police chief, that's all I could ask for. And the residents of this town really stepped it up. They called us in when there was a down wire. We would tell them, please, we'll get someone there as soon as we can. Don't go near a live wire. They listened. That's why we had no major injuries. I know a lot of the officers would come in and say to me, Chief, I was directing traffic down at JFK and Easton when the light went out, and a citizen came up and thanked me, and they just wanted to thank us for all their help. So I just wanted from the bottom of my heart to say thank you for all the phone calls I personally got. I had one woman call me from, I forget what it is, Oregon or California, because her elderly father in one of the 55 and over communities, she called into the 911 dispatch, said she hadn't heard from him. She was nervous. He's on medicine. She didn't know if he didn't take his medicine, he had passed out, and we sent a car over there right away. And it's just little phone calls like that come into a police chief, and I put it down the chain of command, and the officers hear it in briefing, and it goes a long way. So, I just want to thank everybody again for a great team effort, and most of all, I'm just glad that there were no major injuries in Franklin. Yes, we had some damage, but what's the old saying? Damage can be repaired, life can. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank
Bravo.
you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. All right. Well, I'll now go through. In your folders is a packet that starts off with a bullet-pointed cover sheet with Hurricane Sandy actions taken November 8th, 2012. If I could just refer you to that, and I think that what I'm going to do is maybe jump around a little bit. I know that the information that council is probably looking for most in this particular packet is the information related to Public Services response to the outages here in Franklin Township and what we as a township were able to do in regards to that, as well as what we have as a responsibility to our residents and what Public Services responsibility is to our residents. There is the today's on page 2 through 6 or 7 of your packet. There is today's currently posted work plan for public service that was posted on their website and is also posted on our website daily. And what you can see is the current numbers as of 6 o'clock this morning were that there were still 1,624 customers in Franklin Township that had no electric service.
I'm one of them.
I know you are.
I just want to let you know I was one of them.
All right, so there are 1,624 still without power. That's from a high of approximately 24,000 initially after the storm. So we've gone from about 92% of our customers here in Franklin Township without power as a result of this storm down to about 5.6% of our customers without power.
Did I say that I didn't have power? I just want to make sure that you knew I didn't have power.
I thought you volunteered to be the last one to get power.
I would have, but, I...
That's correct.
This is a rather long...
Trust me on that one.
This is a rather long report, if you want to let me get through it here. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
All right. As a result of the outages, Public Service in response to some, I think, criticisms of the public utilities here in New Jersey in response to Hurricane Irene last year, had daily conferences with, we're in the central region of Public Services coverage area. Central region held daily conferences telephone conferences for all the municipalities within the central region, which comprises Union and Somerset and Middlesex counties. What we were able to do is post questions, and I will tell you that one of the biggest questions from our residents and actually from our elected officials was when will power be restored in this particular neighborhood, or why is it taking so long for my neighborhood to be restored? What I will tell you is that you as elected officials and me as your appointed manager are not provided with that information. Public Service does not provide that information to us. That is not something that I have a number that I can call and say, when will power be restored to whatever it might be, whatever street it might be, whatever neighborhood it might be. The work that is done by Public Service is done on a regional basis, we being in the central region, and as I was told time and time again throughout this process that restoration work begins at the highest level, which is, and I'll give you just a real quick tutorial here, try not to bore you, but we have big transmission lines that run through Franklin Township, and that is the first step of restoration if there are transmission lines that need to be repaired. They go to switches, and if switches need to be repaired, then they repair them. And that begins the process from switches to substations to then transformers and then to lines that serve neighborhoods and then to service lines. And in that order is how the repairs are made. So the first effort by Public Service is to restore the switches. We didn't lose any transmission lines. All right, so they needed to repair switches. Once switches were repaired, they moved to substations, and then they moved to transformers and neighborhood lines. All right, so that's how power is restored to a particular neighborhood. Repairs are based, according to Public Service, in a priority order where the most services restored by one repair takes priority on down and then funnels down to the one that gets the least number of restoration, and that would be the single service line. So that's what they subscribe to. I, as your manager, was not satisfied with what I saw happening here in Franklin Township and did not feel that they were following their own prioritization. So I had the opportunity yesterday to participate in a phone conference call with the President of Public Service, as well as Senator Smith and Assemblyman Shivakula and other municipal representatives of the 17th Legislative District. Participating in this particular phone call was Piscataway. In fact, I'm not sure, and I can't say whether any of the other municipalities in the 17th District, which would be New Brunswick, Milltown, and North Brunswick, whether they participated or not, because they did not ask any questions of the President. However, we did. I question their ability to prioritize without input from the municipality as far as what needed to be done in addition to the restoration of neighborhoods that were out. We were asked to provide priority lists of facilities that had no power, and it didn't seem that our priority list was recognized. And in addition, I questioned their own priority list because I had the opportunity in the many, many trips around Franklin Township over the last 12 days to meet with public service crews that were working on in particular neighborhoods that would not have restored a great deal of services, yet neighborhoods where repairs could be done were not. It certainly, I think, got the attention of the President of Public Service, and he gave me every assurance that he would look into my complaints as far as that was concerned. I have not received a response yet today, and I don't anticipate it for some time. However, these issues that we raised and the other problem that existed with Public Service, which was there is no mechanism in place for Public Service to communicate with our municipality at the ground level, where we would have information supplied to them about things that need to be done, and then communication from them when those things are done. I don't have the ability, nor do you, to go anywhere and find out what has been done by Public Service in an effort to restore power to our neighborhoods. I can't tell you if a tree contractor for Public Service has trimmed the trees from the wires or not, because there's no mechanism in place for that. So what happens is it becomes very disjointed. Our public works crews who are out there waiting to clear a road of a tree but are told they can't do that until the wires have been removed from the tree don't know when Public Services contractor has gone out and removed the wires or killed the power to the line. So those issues were addressed with the President as well. I can't say whether or not, at this point, the response from Public Service has been satisfactory or not. That's not a decision I think that will be made anytime soon by anyone. And it's also a matter under the jurisdiction of the Board of Public Utilities, not this body or any other. They are a public utility, and they are governed by the Board of Public Utilities. The BPU will, I'm sure, do an investigation into whether or not the response from Public Service was adequate. What I can tell you is, based on the current figures that were released by Public Service today, that we fall within the average as far as restoration of electric service here in the central region, and in the state for that matter, meaning the number of services restored here in Franklin is at the state average for public service. So we're not high, we're not low, and we seem, as these reports have come out daily, to be right around the state average every day. All right. The plan, according to our governor, was to have everyone restored by the end of the day tomorrow. According to the most recent work plan that you have in front of you, you can see that that's not necessarily the case for most municipalities. There is a Saturday on this work plan. Saturday's restoration number for Franklin Township is 278 services. What will happen, and I think even the governor's plan here, was that we will reach a point where there will be no more work on clusters of homes or businesses, and that the work will now come down to the single service line repairs. And I don't think anyone has looked at the single service repairs as part of the overall plan to a complete restoration. So if there are in fact 278 at that point on Saturday, I would hazard a guess to say that most of those 278 will be those single service line restorations. And that's where line crews will just have to go out and hook people back up where a tree has fallen on the line that goes from the pole to their house. Again, I know there's been a lot of criticism of public service. That's yet to be seen where that goes. We're still in the middle of this process. And while I recognize that no one, and can certainly Councilman Wright can speak to this, it's wonderful to hear that we've restored 95% of the outages here in Franklin Township. When you're part of the 5%, Councilman Wright,
thank you.
It doesn't give you much solace. No. And I understand that. And all I would express to the people who are still out is, we feel the pain. Councilman, you can speak for them now. We feel that.
My refrigerator feels the pain, too, because I lost everything.
And we certainly understand that. But we, as the Township of Franklin, do not have the authority to direct public service. And as much as we might like to give them guidance on where we would like to see the work be done, it's ultimately up to them to do it, and it's up to the Board of Public Utilities to govern it.
The only complaint that I have
is that you don't have power.
Is
that you don't have power.
No, it wasn't the power. It's that when you called them, they said, well, go to the website. And the question that I have is, if you don't have power, how are you going to go to the website?
That's a very valid question. And what I would say is, for any resident who might be hearing this live, is that our Franklin Township Public Library has computers available 7 days a week to any resident without power. If you have a laptop or a wireless device, you can certainly take advantage of not only the library's Wi-Fi, but as we've opened the Community Senior Center to residents from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. to charge their devices and also take advantage of Wi-Fi there as well. So you're right, and I've spoken to people in both of those locations, and it is a great frustration. And the customer service end of public service is a great frustration. I've experienced it myself, and I've experienced it over my entire career at times. So I know that this is not something that's new, but when you have 1.7 million customers out, they overloaded.
And they still want the money for the bill.
They sure do. So that's that. So that's the public service aspect of it.
Can I ask you one question about that? I don't know whether it's a rumor, if it's true or not. Does public service make any compensation to people who have lost all their food and, no. They
No, they do not.
Heard, yeah,
My advice to anyone who has a loss is that they make application to FEMA. And if FEMA has funds available for their loss, then they'll receive them through the federal government. That's the proper avenue. And all that paperwork is available on our website. You can begin to see that, and I'll get to that in a couple minutes, as well as how they can speak to someone from FEMA.
Mr. Manager, on hard sheet or something, so I can take it with me. No power.
It's in your packet.
Mr. Manager, we discussed a rumor about food voucher reimbursements.
There was a rumor out there that FEMA had available a $300 food voucher for anyone who was impacted by this storm. That's not true. It's actually spoken about right on the homepage of FEMA's Hurricane Sandy website. So FEMA does not give out food vouchers. Or I mean, I think what they were saying was $300 in food stamps. They do not, so that can be dismissed.
And
All right.
Councilman Vassallo.
Mayor, not discourage anybody from applying to FEMA, but just to be clear, because I know you responded when it came out the refrigerators, I don't believe that FEMA is replacing food or the cost of removing trees from your property. My understanding, a general rule of thumb is damage to your house or permanent structures is what they will get involved with. Not to discourage anybody, but you just don't get money for having limbs picked up off the ground.
What I would suggest to any resident who feels that they have damage, and it could in fact be tree damage because trees have value, and I'm not disputing what the councilman's saying, but there is the FEMA website, and there is a FEMA office that I'll discuss soon in Somerville that's been opened. And if you have any questions about any sort of restitution for damage as it relates to this storm, you need to speak with FEMA. And we are not in a position to give out any information regarding any payments out. So if I could just continue to move on. If there are no other public service questions, we can move on. Okay. The next thing I'd just like to, as we go through this now, is, as you can see, beginning on November 2nd, the recreation staff as well as emergency management began to staff a warming and charging station at our community senior center, and you can see the numbers. And obviously the numbers have gone down now. And I've also spoken, well, actually I had our assistant manager speak with the library director today. Starting tomorrow, the library is going to revert to their regular business hours, which means an earlier closing time on both on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We anticipate right now our warming station at the senior center to be open tomorrow, and we'll do an evaluation tomorrow as to whether or not it will be open Saturday and Sunday. Based on the current turnout that we had today, and we'll make a determination with today and tomorrow before we go ahead and commit staff to that operation for Saturday and Sunday. Your next page is from our Public Works Manager, Victor Stevens. This just gives you a basic numbers on what we've done so far. There have been 2,571 man-hours expended just related to the storm at this point. All roads have been cleared that were blocked by trees that were not involved with wires. If there is a tree in a road at this particular juncture, it's because there's still a live line from Public Service that they have not had one of their tree contractors deal with. I believe that might be, in Franklin's case, maybe one or two trees at this point. Most cases, the road is now closed because it's now just a wire, and we've removed the tree. There was also in the midst of this a water main break of a 10-inch water main on Crown Road in the World's Fair development. That matter was dealt with and the water main break was repaired. In addition, you can see there were repairs made to the roof at 40 Churchill, the Township Garage, and 935 Hamilton Street, which is our social services building. Currently, we've removed 504 truckloads of brush from the public right-of-way, and clearly there's quite a bit more to go. And we'll talk about that and as we get to the consent agenda. As far as debris removal, and when I say debris, I'm going to talk specifically about vegetative debris, not building materials or the like. Currently, our convenience center at School in Berry is open with extended hours Monday through Friday, as well as Saturday extended hours, and we plan to leave that open with the extended hours through November 21st. If residents bring vegetative debris, it's free for all township residents to bring that debris there and drop it off at the convenience center. On the 26th of November, which is a Monday following Thanksgiving, we plan on then reassigning Public Works crews. At that point, we hope to have all of our preliminary work done on all of our township properties, as well as the clearing of trees in the public right-of-way. And we will move to a curbside pickup of sticks and vegetative debris by our Public Works Department. I mentioned the consent agenda, and the reason I mentioned that is today there was an addition to your agenda. That addition was the transfer of $50,000 for an emergency appropriation to the Public Works OE budget, and that is a resolution on your consent agenda, as are two other resolutions. One for the contracting of large trucks for the removal of this debris from a landscape business, and the other is for an additional piece of equipment, a grappler for one of our front-end loaders. We have one. This will expedite the removal of large trees and trunks, stumps and things like that, and then we'll have the large trucks to remove them from these neighborhoods rather than just relying on our fleet of smaller dump trucks. So those are things that were moved to the agenda today. So that's the plan for debris removal. The next page is the American Red Cross. I know there's been some question about sheltering. Our shelter was initially opened at the tail end of this storm. At the senior center, there was no one at that point that came to our shelter within 24 hours, so we closed our shelter as other shelters had opened in Somerset County. Ultimately, the only shelter left open in Somerset County was Bernard's High School. And it remained open and remains open at this point, with space available for any resident who so chooses to go there. However, what I was advised today is, in addition to the Bernard's High School shelter, that there is now space available at the Rutgers-Livingston Rec Center in Piscataway, and that shelter, which has a capacity of 424, at this afternoon had a current residence of 160. So if any township resident who hears this now wishes to go seek a shelter, there is one available at the Rutgers-Livingston Rec Center. And also on that same page, I mentioned that there is a FEMA office that's now open. It's at 27 Warren Street in Somerville, which is one of the county-owned offices near the county administration building. You can see their hours. This is posted on our township website for anyone who's interested in making a claim to FEMA. You can go to that site, and during those hours, there's no phone call necessary. It's a drop-in facility. You're also able to go on the FEMA website and get that information without visiting if you feel comfortable in filling out any type of FEMA application on your own. The last page is we've reached out to the U.S. Small Business Administration in an attempt to set up a meeting for any small business that was affected by the storm here in Franklin Township, and they've indicated that they will come and meet with us. We have to schedule it, and that will be posted on the website. So if you're the owner of a business that would fall under the category of funding from the Small Business Administration, we will be posting on our website when you will be able to do that here in Franklin Township. And Council, that's my report on what we've done so far regarding our response to Hurricane Sandy.
Great job.
Questions for our manager, Mr. Pardon me. Are there other questions for our manager, Mr. Vornlacher? Okay. So we're going to go on just as a reiteration. Earlier, when you may have come in, we had jumped to our standing committee report. We now came back to near the top, mayor's report. We're going to finish that, then deputy mayor's report. Then we're going to have public discussion, which will be the time to speak of anything of a general nature. And probably in 10 minutes. 5 or 10 minutes we'll be there. Okay, so it's I'm going to devote my report today, for the most part, to the storm. Though, as always, my one relation for my mug of the meeting, it's just got hard to see. It's really a plastic cup with the seal of the state of New Jersey. Actually got that right before the storm. A bunch of mayors were invited to Drumthwacket to hear what the governor's cabinet had to say. It was actually not storm-related, just various things. They gave me that there, but it reminds me we're one state. We made the national news, though we didn't want to make it that way. But I think we're going to make the national news of how we work and pull together. The one non-storm thing I'll say is regarding the election this past week. I want to congratulate everyone who ran, whether winning or not, because anyone who wanted to give of themselves and contribute to the community is certainly a winner in my mind and all of ours. A few points. Our Veterans Memorial Service, also slated for this Sunday, November 11th, will not be held at this point. On a personal level, and that was, I think, indicated by our chief, I've seen unprecedented amounts of kindness and help, people going to others, people letting other people stay with them, feeding them, giving them a hot shower, and putting oneself out for members of the community. Mr. Vornlocker went over much of the PSE&G work. The is posted on our website. We get it, and unlike in the past, now they do put out their goals for the next few days. They don't always hit it, but at least we know where they're going in numbers for our town. With FEMA, with SBA, you have to register or nothing will be done. They're not going to come knock on your door and ask you, do you need any help? So, and if you're not sure, you might as well do it. FEMA is 800-621-FEMA, 800-621-FEMA. SBA for small business is 866-534-7789. And putting on my other hat very slightly, the IRS has extended some deadlines for those affected by the storm, which means anyone in New Jersey. I'm not going to delineate it here, but either check the IRS website, ask your CPA, tax professional, and they could give you if things that were due and will be due will be extended by a little bit. I've been on multiple conference calls probably every day. Sometimes it's FEMA's invited me. The New Jersey League of Municipalities has had a few. The governor's office has had them for mayors, and SBA has had it also. And usually the governor has it. He goes around his cabinet. This is daily, and talks to mayors about what's happening. Last week he had his surprise guest. He put on President Obama. We're not allowed to ask questions. It's a listen-only conference, but he pledged, as he did, that he'd give support to the state. The governor was at the National Guard Armory in town today. That was just kind of a closed meeting. It was for the soldiers to show thank you. A couple of us were invited. I appreciate that. And he said that the Storm Athena probably set the state back 24 to 36 hours in its recovery. But, obviously some areas were hit harder than others. And ironically, the snow was probably better than the rain because that let things seep a little slowly instead of just pouring it on there. And I'm glad, as I'm speaking for all of us usually, to receive emails, calls. I've received dozens, probably scores of them, and tried to return all of them. If I haven't, I've asked my staff to do that. Actually, I don't have any staff here. In my accounting office, I've asked some of the people there that's on my dime to do that because I just think it's important. Hopefully I've gotten through back to everyone and forwarded anything they've had to do. We've tried to get the word out. The township website has proved extremely invaluable. It gives updates. Things are put on there constantly. And as for the council's point of view, as far as social media, Councilman Brian Regan said something on our behalf I saw earlier today. Thank you very much, which was posted. And as I say always, I shifted in my mayor Facebook page to posting, getting word out. If I know of any little thing, I did. But again, the town website was invaluable. very good, and again, thanks Mr. Vornlocker for doing that. And that we tried to get the info out as best we can, and we always appreciate your feedback. And that concludes the Mayor's report. Now we go to item number 7, Deputy Mayor's report from Deputy Mayor Phil Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to very quickly echo the words of the Chief of Police, thanking staff and volunteers who really worked tirelessly and continue to work. We would be in a desperate situation without them. My heart goes out to the people who are suffering, have suffered, and are still suffering out there. I got calls from many of them. I visited many of them. I chainsawed some of them out of their driveways. They generally were upbeat, maybe a little angry, wanted to vent, but then realized that we were all in this together. I was warmed by their resilience. The last person I would like to thank is our manager, who really has had a trial by fire, but council wasn't thinking of this when we picked him, but literally there was no one on this planet who would have been a better choice for this, just because of his background in this town, and his abilities. Had we picked another person to be manager, while they may have eventually been great, they would not have been able to step into this role so quickly, and we were extremely fortunate that he was there. It would have been a different response had it not been for him. So I would like to thank him very much. And we have public waiting to speak, so I will stop speaking.
Okay, thank you. We're now at item number 8 on the agenda, public discussion, and this is going to be the only time to speak of something of a general nature. We're glad to hear what anyone has to say, certainly. So, from the council, is there a motion to open the meeting for public discussion?
So moved. Seconded.
Move second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Meeting is open for public discussion, and I'll give you our general policy. Generally, we ask people to come up once per meeting. There's 5 minutes, which we have timed. When you hear a tone goes off, that means 3 minutes has elapsed. When multiple tones go up, that means 5 minutes has elapsed. We'll ask you to wrap up your thoughts. Please direct all your comments to the council here, and if we can answer anything you ask or comment, we certainly will at the time, but we don't want to take up too much of your time. We ask everyone to come up once per meeting, and usually I'd say anyone interested in please raise your hand, but you already start coming, so okay. When you come up, give us your name and address. Please note we're being audio and videotape, which is being broadcast. When you come to the microphone so we see, well, not see, but because we hear you best, please keep yourself about 3-4 inches from the microphone and give us your name and address. Mr. Bonanno.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor Kramer, members of council. Many of you know my name is Brian Bonanno. I'm the Manager of Administrative Services for the Franklin Township Public Schools. With me this evening is Ms. Talitha Brown, President of the Board of Education, Ms. Ava Naj, who's at the back of the room, member of the Board of Education, and Ms. Eileen Brett, Principal of Sampson G. Smith School, which you heard about earlier. And I'm here really to read a statement from our superintendent, Mr. Cito, who unfortunately couldn't make it this evening. So I'll jump right into that. My apologies for not being able to appear this evening because of a previously scheduled appointment. As of yesterday, close to 25% of the schools in New Jersey were still closed. And one school, Sampson G. Smith, in Franklin Township, was closed through yesterday. I am pleased and privileged to report that as of today, all of our township schools are open. While the work of recovery after a major disaster, the magnitude of Hurricane Sandy, is the collective effort of many, oftentimes the efforts of a critical few make all the difference in the world. Tonight, I wish to take a moment publicly to thank and express my appreciation for the assistance and consistent support that was provided by Mayor Levine, Township Manager Vornlocker, and Chief Larry Roberts. To our school district administrators and to me over the last 2 weeks in our work to assess and restore services for the opening of schools. I thank Mayor Levine for his accessibility advocacy, and efficiency in communicating with our school district's urgent need to those who facilitated the repair of a live power line that was dangling at the perimeter of Sampson G. Smith Intermediate School for over a week as a consequence of Hurricane Sandy. As a result of the mayor's direct and immediate intervention, a dangerous situation was remedied and power was restored to Sampson G. Smith, even while daily requests by others over the last 2 weeks were not responded to with any remedy. As a consequence of Mayor Levine's advocacy and PSE&G's repair work last evening, resulting in the restoration of power, Sampson G. Smith staff were able to return to school today and prepare classrooms for the return of students. Sampson G. Smith would not have opened for school tomorrow without the power restoration. I thank Township Manager Vornlacher and Chief Roberts for being accessible to me and members of my administration on multiple occasions daily, 7 days a week, so that we could communicate about ongoing needs, changing conditions, progress towards improvement, and outstanding challenges to facilitate the return of staff and students to each of our schools. While I appreciate and thank the efforts of the many who have contributed to the restoration of power and services throughout our community and in our school district, I am particularly grateful to Mayor Levine, Township Manager Vornlacher, and Chief Roberts for a job exceptionally done under extremely trying circumstances with competing priorities. Sincerely, Edward Q. Cito.
Gee, thanks.
Mr. Cito really did want to be here tonight, but he just could not get out of his previous commitment and wanted to be sure that at the first opportunity to come and thank all of you for your dedication.
Thanks.
Talitha Brown.
Ms. Brown.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Severin Matisse, Somerset, New Jersey. I'll be really brief. I just want to say that it would have been really challenging not to open SGS because that's a large body of students, and it would have been difficult to redirect them. So you just have no idea how invaluable it is for us to have it open. So I know we said thank you, but really, really thank you, because it really allows us to move forward in a way that benefits students, and ultimately that's our role as the district. And so the fact that the town would help us that way, it's huge, and I hope this partnership continues to grow. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And I should have said President Brown of our Board of Education.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. And as Brian mentioned, I am Eileen Brett, 106 Copley Place in North Brunswick, New Jersey, and I am the very proud principal of SGS. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you are allowing me to welcome the students back to school. Normally, on a work day, you would see me more professionally dressed in a suit. I'm dressed in the way I am because I just came from school, having worked with the teaching staff to prepare the classrooms for instruction tomorrow. That was 15 classrooms that we charged into today with a lot of spirit, great enthusiasm, and I need to look at you in your faces and say thank you so much. I know you trust me to educate the students of SGS. Thank you for allowing them to come back so that we can. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Ms. Saba, then you can come after.
Good evening. My name is Saba, 146 Emerson. Sorry. Thanks for everything that everybody has done. Just I wanted to tell you a little bit about our story and a few questions that has come to my mind as the result of Sandy. We did not have power for 9 days. For 8 days. Last Monday went and this Monday came back on Emerson. But at the same time, we did not have water. Because all of our, the Emerson Road is all wells. Everybody has well. But my major concern about this was there a priority? Is there a priority list in the township? And if resident of places like Emerson, who is an older resident area in Township about 60 years, and some of the old people who have moved there, they are still living there. And these are older people that could have had some needs. And as Councilman Wright was saying, when they refer people to go on the internet, many of the people who are older generation, they don't have internet. Even I don't use texting anymore. I said I've decided that I have enough connection to the whole world. I don't want more of it. So that was my concern, because especially I saw one of the residents of the on Emerson, who was an elderly, older than me. And also her husband had a stroke before Sandy, but so they needed special help, and particularly not having water. We had, for example, ourselves, we had water for drinking and cooking if we wanted, but we did, water for bathing and flushing and all that is very hard. And we brought a lot in, but because we had some friends who didn't have anything, and they were single and they didn't want to stay at home alone, so we had to accommodate it in our own house. So we didn't complain, and I didn't call anyone, because I felt that, Emerson is not high priority and shouldn't be for that, because the houses are much far apart, and priority that FEMA and other places I appreciated that they had that. But it would become frustrating when we had a bunch of lines that they were scattered on Emerson, because we had lost two poles, and the lines were there, and also there was a huge tree that had fallen on one of the wires, and it was sitting there for a while, for about 7 days, I guess, and then snapped, and it was hot wire. But I am surprised to hear, and I'm really disappointed that somehow PSCNG does not cooperate with the township. Maybe that has to become a rallying cry to get them to understand that when they are operating in a township, and the particular township is willing to work with them and process and help the resident and help also their customer, there should be that. It should be maybe a statewide recommendation and demand from public utility to ask them to have that type of cooperation. I really appreciate everything that everybody has done. I know everybody was at all times busy and active and doing everything, and I really thank you despite that. But I really wanted to have some announcement of water in Emerson or places like Emerson that people didn't have water. That becomes very difficult. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, Mayor, your office, after I called them on the 8th day, I haven't got your response yet. Okay. I want you to know. Thanks.
Okay, you called this office here?
No, I don't.
The other? Okay. I'll check it, thank you.
I know that
I'll check my schedule. Pardon me, and I'll get to it. Yeah, pull the microphone up a little bit, though, please.
Yes, my name is George Keene. I live at 5291 Highway 27 in the Little Rocky Hill section of the township that was under discussion at the very beginning of the evening. That I guess I'm last man standing, as it were. I do want to thank the township for giving consideration to what I know to be an extremely complicated infrastructure problem in the district. That I've lived at that address for 40-some years. I originally hooked up to the water system because I was given notification from the EPA that my well, which is 1/3 of a mile from the Superfund site, was no longer suitable for drinking. So that water service, public water service, is essential where I'm located. I wanted to elaborate on or expand upon Councilman Chase's comment that I think you would all agree that a water main is infrastructure. It's definitional. And it requires maintenance regardless of cost, and I know that it's absorbent. But that to compare it to overlook it as saying that it's a hole in the road does not quite say it. It's more as though you had a bridge, which is also by definition infrastructure, that gave out, you would be required, incumbent, to repair a bridge. And the pipe is in the same category. That it relates to issues that you're well aware of. It's water safety. I'm in that section that is not accessible to South Brunswick. That it has implications for fire safety. It has implications for my fire insurance. That the pressure is an annoying problem, but it's sustainable. That I appreciate your efforts in finding a solution. I hope that you can do that. But the fire safety is critical, and the water pressure could use some improvement. So I applaud your efforts, and I hope that you can make an agreement with South Brunswick to alleviate this problem. But it certainly needs repair. And you people on the council, you know the amount of blowouts that we have on that highway in the winter, in the cold months. If we have a major blowout, that supplying bottled water, as this woman has said, does not cover it. There are other, water supply needs that can't be, fixed with a Band-Aid method. So I applaud your efforts, and hopefully we'll have resolution on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public who has not spoken yet?
Seeing as there's no one else, Mayor, I motion to close the public portion of the meeting.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. We're now at item number 10, council comments, because we did standing committee reports earlier. So yes, can start over here. Councilman Rajiv Prasad.
I want to thank everybody that helped with the recovery with Sandy, and congratulate our township manager for a job well done, and his dedication and tireless effort saw us through a very difficult storm, the worst in history. So kudos to all his staff, the police, the fire, all the first responders. Great job. And I also was without power for not as long as Councilman Wright, but I did not have a generator. But my daughter, who lives in Marlborough, was out of power for a week and moved in with me with my 2 grandchildren. So, so I had that pleasure of dealing with screaming baby and 2-year-old in the middle of the night because they were displaced. Anyway, but I feel everybody's pain, and I sympathize. It's been a tough time, and I do want to congratulate all the people that ran in the elections, and the winners and the losers for their effort and dedication and to public service. And finally, on a brighter note, Tuesday is Diwali, which is the Indian New Year. So happy Diwali to everybody. Let's hope it's going to be a better year in future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman?
Chase walked out.
Oh, okay. Councilman Carl Wright.
I want to echo the sentiments of my fellow council member, Rashid Prasad. The hour is late. It's 9 o'clock. We got a full schedule, so I'll just say 12 days and counting, no power. So with that, I want to thank the Chief of Police, our Township Manager, all the volunteers, everyone that worked during this crisis. I want to say thank you. And to the residents of Franklin Township, thanks for hanging out with us. We learned from this experience, and hopefully the next time, if there is a next time, we can handle the situation much better. But back to the old refrain, Township Manager, 12 days and counting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Ted Chase.
I'm sorry I just stepped out because I wanted to speak to my constituents there who just spoke. I, too, would thank all of the township staff, particularly the manager and the police force and all of the people who have worked on the emergency. I admit I decided my role was to stay out of the way, particularly considering that I live much farther away from all of the activities than the rest of you, and we did have the gas problem. From what I'm hearing, I think I'm grateful. I'm particularly grateful to have gotten my power back as soon as Sunday afternoon, and in fact, I had expected it to be longer. I guess at least 2 council members still do not have power. Yet, it's largely hard to second guess PSC and G about how they prioritize, because there are so many people, so many customers, so hard to, so much detail to deal with. I think, maybe the manager could tell us how we can transmit comments to the Board of Public Utilities. One of the things that, and this is not from my own experience, but from the manager's reports, it would seem desirable to put a higher priority on restoring traffic signals along major highways than seems to have been the case. I suppose that's a different category from residential service, but it is a matter that affects a large number of people, and can be a real safety consideration if people are incautious at major intersections that normally are signalized. I know we discussed at considerable length the situation of the water line on Route 27. I like Mr. Keene's analogy to a bridge, and I think the situation we have now is it's as if we had a bridge. Well, yes, it is open, and yes, you can drive a private car across it, providing you don't go more than 20 miles an hour, and we can't get a fire truck across it, but yes, the bridge is still in service. I would like to see the bridge be put in much better, in the kind of service that is expected for all public infrastructure. I'll certainly leave that topic at that. I don't think I have any other comments to make.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Rosalind Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add my voice to the thanks and gratitude to all of the folks here in Franklin, including the citizenry, for cooperating under the very dire circumstances that we had. My most direct connection was with our township manager. Many people were in touch with me regarding loss of electricity, people on life support, people with electric beds. It was very heartrending to hear all the stories, and people still without electricity. And again, kudos to our manager who really was there and managed to give me the answers that I could relay to constituents, and job well done. Thank you. Okay, on to a couple of other issues. Something on a brighter side, I read an article in the local paper about one of our teachers, Ron Richter, who is a business teacher at Franklin High School, and he's been named the recipient of the first Educator of the Year award by Junior Achievement of New Jersey. And I know Mr. Richter. He has been active in some of the programs I'm involved with, such as Franklin Youth Initiative, and he has helped many times, and I understand the reason for the award. He has been very active, and it's well-deserved, so I just wanted to recognize him for what he has done. With regard to a couple of things that we had planned for the Franklin Township Cultural Arts Council, we are rescheduling one of the events. If people were planning on attending any of the last two of the poetry events, the one this coming Saturday is still scheduled as it was. Poetess Nancy Scott will be performing or reading some of her work. The one where Maxine Sussman was going to read some of her poetry has been rescheduled to the 18th of November, and that's primarily because the Van Lusa Dam House had some damage, and we had to reschedule that particular poetry reading. We have canceled the December 9th holiday event that the Performing Arts Committee was planning on putting on. It was just too hard to get communications and get everything done in time for this. So we're going to not move away from that event. We think it's a great event, and hopefully next year we'll be able to do a wonderful program for our children and for our adults. So the December 9th event has been canceled. On a very solemn note, I would like to share with everyone that November 9th was the night in 1938 that was called a Kristallnacht. It is the night that mobs burned synagogues, destroyed Jewish homes and businesses, and vandalized the hospitals and orphanages and cemeteries. The Jewish people were at that point systematically deprived of their civil rights and were isolated from the general populace. What Kristallnacht teaches us, or Kristallnacht teaches us many things, among them that we must remain vigilant and not permit even the smallest seed of prejudice to take root. We cannot afford to be complacent in the face of prejudice, distortions. Quiet little lies grow into big, loud lies. We cannot forget. And to wrap up, again, I would like to congratulate all of the people who have participated in the elections, and to our elected officials, I urge we return to some form of civility in dealing with one another so that we can move forward for the betterment of the country and work together more in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman James Fasanella.
Thank you, Mayor. The gentleman had left who had come up and was talking about the concern about the water pressure. Just without getting a big discussion, I just want to make sure that him and people that may live near him realize that we do not, I repeat, do not have a compromised response. If in the case of fire, that we have the adequate fire trucks and water capability. There's many areas in this town that operate on wells and do not have fire hydrants. So although the fire hydrants in the 27 area discussed earlier may not have as much pressure capability as other places, or as much as we would like, there's many places we fight or may have to fight a fire in this town and have absolutely no fire hydrants and water pressure. Just want to make sure that issue was separated. Good segue over here. I see Ms. Saba smiling that one of the areas is her area, and as much as I would be fighting for one, as she has fire hydrants in her neighborhood, the reality of it is we simply can't afford at this point, unless the majority of citizens in the neighborhood wanted to pay for the cost via an assessment equal to their land value, property value. We can't just start extending them. What we can is make sure anything going forward, any construction that can include them. So, and while I'm on the issue of Ms. Saba, I spoke to her a few times during the storm and related power outages, and her concern to me was she was quite vocal about this, was not for her own sake, but for some of the elderly people in the neighborhood that were out without water or power. And it is a little bit different for a neighborhood who has wells. Obviously, just insult to injury there. The not having water on top of not having power, but. Using her neighborhood as an example, I drove around quite a bit day and night, and I would find people, I just would stop if I saw someone walking by and ask if they needed anything, everything was okay. And more often than not, it was people that were fine and were actually, in a quiet way, walking around their neighborhood to kind of keep an eye. Not that they were expecting problems or crime or anything, but just to see if everybody was all right. And I found that in quite a few neighborhoods in the 5th Ward, so I was quite impressed by the community reaction and support, because no matter how many police or fire or rescues, no matter how many people we have, paid or volunteer, that definitely rose to the occasion. We had another layer of protection in our town and comfort, and that was the citizens. Now, without getting into the whole thing with PSE and G, residents are still out, and having only gone, I think, 3 or 4 days without power, I could just imagine what it would be like to go to this point. That being said, maybe PSE and G's prioritization policies and the way they fix their stuff is fine, but something that I'm going to go on a limb and say definitely isn't fine, I don't care what reports we get, and that's their communication system, both with the public and with local officials, local, perhaps even county officials. So that's something that I've already decided. The rest of it may be a good, well laid out plan. We obviously aren't been too informed as to how those plans actually work. The local elections took place. By local, I mean we have county, we have school board. They aren't official yet, I believe, because of the problems in the county and even the township with counting all the ballots, so I'm not going to mention who the supposed winners were because it's not been official. But the one other item I'll mention is the Emergency Management Council, Emergency Preparedness Committee will be meeting and reviewing over the next few months how things went with this situation and how things can be improved. The one issue that I'm going to throw on the table now is I think that the town needs to look at being able to have a simple water truck available, because a water truck that can deliver water to the neighborhoods around this town, and you look at the demographics and geography of this town, to me it's a no-brainer, as they say, and that's something that perhaps OEM will spur the initiative, but council can always do on their own, because water is essential, and a good old-fashioned water truck, just like a good old-fashioned radio truck to get out the word when our grid fails, is something I think would just has been overlooked, not just by our town, but by many towns, possibly because we've just simply never experienced anything to this degree. With that, I'll move on, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Brian Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to talk a little about the EOC and what occurred that night. After Hurricane Irene, we had an EOC and everything went very well that time. But we did have a key learnings, and out of that there was a number of items that came. And what I'm happy to report about is that this time the EOC worked highly efficiently. There was improvements made, feedback taken. One was to be ready for fuel for the fire districts. That was addressed early in the process. The other was that we added the sewage authority to the EOC and part of their meetings. That was not an integrated part when we had Hurricane Irene. So there was, I want to thank the sewage authority for their involvement in the EOC, and they were an active member as part of that. Additionally, we addressed very early the need for Willow Creek in their evacuation. That wasn't done to the place where it had been done in the past, as it was really a good choice given the current state. And they were moved out. A majority of their folks were moved to Doubletree. So a lot of improvements from the last time around. This time, I'm sure, in fact, I know we will have another key learnings once the dust settles, and I'm sure there will be some tune-ups that we'll have to do. And that's, some people may take offended that, we did our job well, we don't have to do it better, and there's always areas for improvement, and that's what's good about Franklin Township working here with the EOC, is that people are open to that. As far as the folks in the EOC that night, I had spent many hours that Monday night and then Tuesday as part of it, because my building actually, work-wise, was shut down in Piscataway, so I physically could not go into work, and our network was down. So I was able to spend many hours in the EOC on Monday and Tuesday. And again, very impressed with, as the chief talked about, and Bob Vornlacher, first Gary and his leadership, naturally Bob and his leadership, the fire department, EMS, the police department, Department of Public Works, the water department, as I mentioned, the sewage department, and very key to this, and I believe, what we did better than was, we had the IT department as a key integral part of that EOC. And there were many times Bob had indicated during the night that having someone on site in the EOC as part of that helped to move things along. And I know that the security in that building is very good, because when I tried to access it, it thought it was an inappropriate access, and but I had the IT there that night to help. So again, very impressive. I think that, one of the key learnings I know that we have to look at budget-wise going into next year is providing a generator for the Public Works Depot and probably some other areas there. And the senior centers, thank you. I knew there were two places. Okay. The other aspect of this was the Thursday morning prior to Sandy hit, and I actually sent a communication to Bob Vornlacher, like, hey, it looks like we're going to need to kick in, and he had already been ahead of the curve and had that going. But in doing that, the staff and the chief mentioned this, the pre-planning on the swing shift coverage to ensure that we did not burn anybody out in the EOC having to stay there for 48 hours or 72 hours. It was a planned shift coverage, and again, that helped to the efficiency and the way it ran. We did the last time have actually some volunteers who stayed in the EOC, and they were up and working more than 24 hours, and truly their dedication is to be admired. But when you go into a crisis like this, you really want to make sure that you're getting the staff that are there the rest that they need. This time we had cots available, we had food allocated, we had water. It was really a lot better working conditions in the EOC this time around. Other members, again, part of the initial planning, besides the departments that I mentioned, it included the BOE. We had a representative that Friday that Bob had worked with to ensure that they were included in the loop. Significant contributors to this overall plan that were very critical, that is very visible to the residents, was the rec department members and the library. Myself and the mayor actually walked over the library. I forgot what day that was, Friday. I lost track of the days now. And the library hadn't thought about increasing their hours due to keep their Thursday, to keep their the conference room open as a charging room. And after I and the mayor spoke to them, brought that to their attention, the next day I got a communication from Mr. Vornlacher that the director, January Adams, did take that suggestion and did do it. So again, my thanks to the library, January Adams and her library staff, for really helping out. I know at various times I walked through the library, and the people were very appreciative when I was there, and also in the senior center. And then the only other thing is that Monday night, Bob, I will leave it to Bob to tell the story, but we had a very interesting ride during the height of the hurricane to survey the potential flood damage that we were going to get, and it was a very interesting ride, and I'm just glad that I was driving around with him and him at the helm that night. But it was very good. So again, my overall thanks to everybody in the town and to the residents who really did help make this easier. We did not have any stranded cars like we did the last time, and overall it went very well. So, and again, I do have to, as everybody had also mentioned, my thanks to Bob Warnlocker, as we did spend many hours together over this event, and he did an excellent job with his leadership. Mr. Mayor, thank you. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. And EOC is Emergency Operations Center? Command.
Emergency Operations
Center, yeah.
Okay, which is basically the command center for emergencies.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Phil Kramer.
Thank you, Mayor. I've already spoken.
Oh, did you say something?
He said it's done.
Oh, okay. Pardon me. Very efficient. And then I'll just also say there's going to be, over the time, a lot of people to thank, and I think Councilman Fasanella, who stepped aside, I think he visited East Franklin when there were a lot of people there. Also, East Franklin Fire Department, they provided cots and food and drinks and board games for people who had to be there also. There's going to be a lot, but I remember you saying that was one of them that you went to see.
That was one. I'm sure other firehouses did, but there was a need in that particular area, Mayor, with a lot of people out of power right up till even, I think, a couple now. So, yeah, they came through and provided for especially the local community, many of who they went and personally went to their doors to get and let them know.
Okay, thank you. I've got no other comments, so now I'll continue on the agenda. Item number...
Excuse me.
Oh, pardon me. Councilman Ted Chase, please.
One other thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I think should be, that there's been a notice out that 2 out of 3 pumps at the Raritan Valley Sewage Treatment Plant in Fairville are out, and the entire service area, and that includes us, are requested to minimize their water usage because what cannot be pumped through the sewage treatment plant is going directly into the river untreated, and therefore just try to minimize the use of water that goes into the sewer system. And I guess this hadn't gotten out.
Well, Councilman, it's on our website. The Middlesex County Utilities Authority and the DEP and the governor actually have both, all three have rung in on this one. There's an order from the governor on the restriction and use of water in the state of New Jersey based on the hurricane and the strain it's put on the water system statewide. As far as the specific issue with the sewage treatment plant in Sayreville, which is where the problem lies, the DEP and the MCUA have requested that all participating municipalities, Franklin being one of them, post on their website some information regarding what you're speaking of. It's on our website. It was posted this morning. So if anyone has anything, any interest in what Dr. Chase is speaking of, the information is available on our website now.
Good.
Okay. And Mayor, if I could just, there's one,
Mr. Warnlocker, please.
One in particular that no one has mentioned, and I don't know if all of council even is aware of this. Early on in the process, after the storm was over, the township was approached by a local business, Cedar Hill Landscaping on Cedar Grove Lane and New Brunswick Road, with the offer to provide not only crew and equipment, but also their yard to be used as a staging area for our Public Works Department and more or less a transfer station for debris that was being collected by our Public Works Department, so as they didn't need to travel all the way to Churchill Avenue every time. They did this free of charge, and they continue to do it as of today. So, that's what would obviously be significant expense to that particular business owner. The Janho family has had that business and has been a resident of Franklin Township for, many, many, many years. It's now, I believe, in its third generation. And so I would just like to publicly thank the Janho family and Cedar Hill Landscaping for the effort that they made as good neighbors here in Franklin Township. And I know our Public Works Department has appreciated everything they've done tremendously. So I just wanted to let you all know that.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that acknowledgement. Okay. So now we'll go on with our agenda to item number 12, approval of the minutes, of which we do not have any this evening. So we have item 13, the warrants. Warrants are the bills that we pay. Warrants in the amount of $2,326,728.37 on November 8th, 2012, are presented to the Township Council for payment. Is there a motion to pay the warrants as read?
So move. Second.
Then move. And second? All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. Madam Clerk, please pull the council on the warrants.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay. Motion is carried. Thank you. I neglected item number 11, council discussion items, on our new agenda. We have a Cable Television Advisory Committee draft, Comcast franchise renewal, ascertainment period, project charter.
Yeah, actually, I didn't request it to put on as a discussion item, but just real quick, I can let council know what this is. The Cable Advisory Committee, who's been meeting regularly, Councilman Chase and myself go to most of their meetings. This past Monday was my child's birthday, so I unfortunately couldn't attend Monday evening. But this is basically, council got hard copy in their packets and may have electronically also. It's pretty self-explanatory. This was sent to Bob and Donna and all the council from our clerk. It's a Cable Television Advisory Committee draft for the franchise renewal ascertainment period project charter. I know it sounds like a lot of words, but basically if council could just read through this, and if they have any questions about this, please forward them to Councilman Chase and myself. And otherwise, basically the committee is asking us to give them some direction or feedback. I ask that that's done at the next meeting so that they can move forward with the parts of this, that the parts of the whole ascertainment period that they're involved with, and they can continue their work, which is mainly to prepare for council a report. So I ask by the next meeting, Mayor, that any council people, council people's prepared to move forward on giving them a yay or nay and have any amendments or suggestions prior to that meeting.
Okay, we'll see that come forward to us. Right? Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, good. So, thank you for that. Now we'll go back to the agenda where I leapfrogged over that. It's item number 14, public hearing and adoption of ordinances on second reading. And ordinances are generally voted on two times. First time they're voted on for introduction, and the second time, usually the next meeting or two, they're voted on a second time. And at that second meeting, there's a public hearing where people can discuss that ordinance. And after they're voted on affirmatively a second time, the ordinance goes into law. So now we have two today of ordinance hearings and second readings. The first is item 14A on the agenda, ordinance 3993-12, an ordinance to amend the municipal code book Chapter 115, Dogs and Other Animals of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, with the repeal of Article 5, Cats, and the amendment of Article 2, Dogs and Cats. This is basically changing, due to state law, that dogs, we have when we pass to license cats, we had inside cats basically are an exception, and inside dogs, and we've been told inside dogs do not exist according to the state, so that's out. All dogs have to be licensed, and there's a couple other minor technical corrections. The Township Attorney has approved the affidavit of publication, and a public hearing is in order. Is there a motion to open the meeting for a public hearing on this ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I want to bring to the attention of the council an absolutely de minimis correction, which is that in section 115-23.2, there's a reference to 115.37, which is actually one of the parts that had been taken out that was in the separate cat section. So it just needs to be changed from 115, the reference needs to be changed from 115.37 to 115.7. I think council will agree that that's a de minimis change.
It's a typographical error.
Okay. So that can, so we can, do you want to look first?
No, it's all right.
So we can just make that adjustment, that's fine. Okay.
The clerk says okay.
Thank you, Councilman Chase.
Pastor Clerk.
Okay. Is there a motion to open the meeting for a public hearing on this ordinance?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. The meeting is open for public discussion on this ordinance. Anyone interested in speaking, please raise your hand.
Mayor, as there are no folks in the audience here, I make the motion to close public session.
Seconded.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Is there a motion for final passage of the ordinance and publication
moved.
in accordance with law?
Second.
Moved and second. Ms. McCarthy, please poll the council on item 14A, ordinance 3993-12, please.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay, motion is carried. Next we have the second and last of the ordinance hearings, item 14B on the agenda, ordinance 3994-12, an ordinance amending the Code of the Township of Franklin in the County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, more particularly Chapter 384 Water, Article 4 Water Rates and Meter Charges. And what we're doing is we did not have charges for 8-inch meters because we never had any before. We have a new developer, Avalon Bay, I think it's called, on Easton Avenue, who will do that, and this puts charges in for that particular kind of meter. The Township Attorney has approved the affidavit of publication, and a public hearing is in order. Is there a motion for public hearing, public discussion on this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Meeting is open for public discussion on this particular ordinance. Anyone interested in speaking, please raise your hand.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Since still no one has entered and the audience is empty, I make a motion to close the public session.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Public hearing is closed on this ordinance. Thank you. There's motion for final passage of the ordinance and publication in accordance with law.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Madam Clerk, please poll the council on item 14B, ordinance 3994-12, please.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Okay, motion is carried. We have two ordinance introductions this evening. Item 15A on our agenda is ordinance number 3995-12, an ordinance amending the Code of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, more particularly Chapter 112, Development, regarding the zoning of the Trap Rock Quarry area. Basically, this is an update to their quarry plan. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, December 11th, 2012, at 7 o'clock p.m. here at the Municipal Complex. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay. Madam Clerk, please pull the council on item 15A, ordinance 3995-12, please.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay, motion is carried. Now, the second and last of our ordinance introductions is item 15B on the agenda, ordinance number 3996-12, an ordinance amending the code of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, more particularly Chapter 112, Development, Section 112-6, Zoning Map. This is a zoning change. It's on Lakeside. This is on Easton Avenue near Imperia, from an R40 to an R20 zone. The foregoing ordinance is presented to the Township Council for adoption on first reading, posting, publication in accordance with law, and public hearing and final adoption on Tuesday, December 11th, 2012, at the Municipal Complex. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please pull the council on item 15B, ordinance 3996-12, please.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay, motion is carried. Next, we have item number 16, our consent agenda. The consent agenda is items which are basically of a routine nature that are voted on all at one time. It's any council person's prerogative to pull anything off for a separate vote. So we have consent agenda items A through T. They are listed on the consent agenda portion of this meeting and presented to the Township Council for adoption. Is there questions or motion for the consent agenda?
Mayor?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I had a question.
Councilman Vasanella,
Yes, I had a question about one. I don't necessarily asking for it to be pulled, not yet anyway. That's Resolution R, number 12-536, basically the up to $105,000 allocated for the engineering work. I don't have it right now in front of me, but a question is the way the resolution written, does it forbid us to use any of that $105,000 for the engineering work that will be required for the other parks that are part of the, without getting into the whole timetable, but basically we are active now and going into the early next year with other aspects of engineering. So can we use this, or does a separate appropriation need to be made for each project that we're doing engineering work or needing an outside consultant for?
This is not an appropriation. It's professional. It's a contract, and I think the scope.
Well, that's what I mean, using the word contract.
Well, the scope of these services are for Middlebush Park. That's what the contract is.
So, is there anything?
This is specifically for Middlebush Park for the inspection and oversight of Phase 3, which is the second turf field, the bleachers and the press box, and those things which council has already authorized to be done at that park. That's all this is for.
So not to interfere or prolong any of that work being done, is there anything prohibiting us to use the balance of what would be left after they're doing this work to be used for any of the other projects that aren't technically Phase 3 Middlebush?
Yes.
Mr. Renone?
Yes. You'd have to amend the resolution in the contract.
Okay.
And I don't know that there's any... I think that what we've just described here is not something that you would do on the other parks. This is the oversight and inspection of the installation of a turf field. So you wouldn't...
So looking ahead, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not contesting that. So looking ahead, though, with the other work that's inevitable, that should be, according to the timelines, being done soon, can other projects, and we don't have to go into detail now, but other projects be put onto one resolution going forward as far as contracting for outside services? Can we put multiple projects so they can keep moving?
The answer is yes. You could award an engineering contract to one company to design 5 parks. Whatever you want to do.
So just, I guess, the land use or whoever be considering the next phase, if we can do that.
It's already been done. I'm a little confused. This has already been a discussion item.
No, not for this park.
Not for this park.
Right.
For the next park, which would be the southern portion of the township and Catalpa property, and that matter's already going to another engineering firm to begin the process of the LOI and the initial concept design. That's already been done.
Other projects, say, like Arlington Avenue and some of the other projects.
Those issues, I mean, and I'd rather not to muddy the waters here at this particular point in the council meeting, but those issues have been addressed on a number of occasions at council meetings where the list of improvements to existing parks and then the decision to move forward with the plan that was developed for the township direct needs assessment and where we're going from here have been discussed at both finance oversight and I believe Public Works, and there's been a decision to move forward with Catalpa, and that's what we're doing.
So the rest of the timeline's on hold for now?
Well, it's not a question of the rest of the timeline, Councilman. I think that it's just we're moving forward with that as the next phase of park development. And I'm certain there'll be additional discussion as we move forward with that. And then as far as the needs of the existing parks, council approved the expenditures that were recommended by staff on the 1-year, 2-year, and 3-year plans, and we've approved the 1 year, and we've begun to make those improvements at those parks that are existing.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the consent agenda, or a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to pass.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Ms. McCarthy, please poll the council on the consent agenda.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yeah, I know.
Was that he? Okay.
He's waiting. He's thinking.
I had to look at something first.
He's waiting for his power to come on.
12 days and counting. I just want you to know.
He was rebooting there. He's fine.
Okay. Now we come to item number 17. Resolutions vote on separately. So a few items have been added since the weekend. 3 resolutions, 17A, B, and C. Resolutions 12-539, 40, and 41, basically due to the appropriations for the storm cleanup. Mr. Bornlocker, anything to add?
No, this is what I spoke of earlier in the meeting. These are the dump trailer rental and the piece of equipment, and then the emergency transfer of funds from the manager's other expense budget to Public Works.
Okay. Thank you. So is there a motion for items 17A, B, and C?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please poll the council on items 17A, B, and C. The resolutions vote on separately. Resolutions 12-539, 540, and 541, please.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay.
The money that's left over.
We now come to item number 18, old business, board and commission appointments. Are there any nominations for the vacancies which have been given to us?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman, Deputy Mayor Kramer, Councilman, anyone?
Yeah, thank you,
Take the
Mr.
lead?
Mayor.
Okay.
I would like to nominate Chanel Robinson for the vacant spot for a Democrat on the Ethics Board.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman Sherman, please.
I know Ms. Robinson, and I'm all in favor of her. I have no problem. I don't know whether other council people, we usually give them some time to read it. Was it in our packet?
It was in our packet.
I didn't notice it. I guess I'm sorry. All right. Just wanted to make sure everybody had equal opportunity to read her background, which is impressive.
And I actually mentioned her at the last council meeting, so, yes.
Okay.
And, Madam Clerk, what is the termination of this, how, she's filling an existing position. They're normally, 5-year positions, so.
Right.
If you don't know offhand, that's okay. I think it's like 3 years left on it.
I could say this.
I thought it was listed. Unexpired term ending December 31, 2014.
Okay, so 2 years. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, and appreciate the wanting all of us to have, from Councilwoman Sherman, all of us, the opportunity to see that. And on just briefly on the Ethics Committee, there are 6 members. Is that it, Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Okay, and no more than 3 can be of any political party, so she's from the Democratic side. And I've known her, and I remember reading through her resume, and I think she came from Rutgers, and I think worked for an accounting firm, both I can relate to, so she certainly has my vote. Are there any other nominations? Okay.
She's in the accounting.
I do have a nomination.
Oh, I mean just for this position on ethics.
No, not on this.
Okay, so all 4, Chanel Robinson, by acclamation, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. Motion is carried. Congratulations, Ms. Robinson, and Ms. McCarthy will contact her appropriately. Councilman Prasad, please.
Yeah, we want to thank Bob Stone for his service to the Human Relations Commission. He has resigned and is moving to Florida, and his unexpired term that ends in December 31st, 2013, is a vacancy that we need to fill. And Susie Ismail, her CV and leadership form was circulated to the council, and I'd like to nominate her. The chairman of the Human Relations Commission has interviewed her and recommended her to the council, and so I'd like to make that nomination.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, please.
Sherman.
I remember her name, and I remember her resume, but I never read it in relationship to the Human Relations Council. Again, I want to make sure we're abiding by the rules that we set, that everyone has the opportunity, at least before the appointment, to review the resume and bring up any issues. And I just don't feel, having filed her resume the way I have it, but, it goes back a couple of weeks, and I'd like to go back and have the opportunity to read it and see if I have any questions or issues.
She filled out a leadership form, which
I know
state that she was interested in the Human Relations Commission.
She also stated she was interested in the
Cultural
Cable
Arts.
TV Committee, but did not respond to an invitation to come to a meeting of that committee. But I guess she's more interested in the Human Relations Committee. Have you been in touch with her?
Yes, and she has been interviewed by the chairman of the Human Relations Commission, and
that
he's
should
made the
be-
recommendation to us.
And I think if the chairman of the commission makes a recommendation, that's a pretty strong recommendation.
I'm just trying to remind everyone of what we agreed to, as she also applied for cultural arts. So she had 3 different things on her form.
Yeah,
And,
but she interviewed,
Understood.
and she was recommended.
So we
So
have
I'd like
no...
to have this nomination there and get it approved.
So council is not given the privilege of reading the resume?
You received the resume, you reviewed it, you filed it, it's with you.
I don't remember it.
Okay, well.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's been moved and seconded.
Right. Okay. And in Okay. Okay, nomination discussion. She's very good for the position, but just on the general point, if I had a resume 2 weeks ago, or I should say 4 weeks ago or 4 years ago, due to my limited memory, I may not remember who that person was, so I think it is fair if we give the resume in conjunction with the position. That way it kind of works for all of us, because I think the goal here is all of us just want to put someone good on these positions. I think we all agree she's good, just kind of following our standard format don't mean to interpret what you're saying, is a good concept. Okay. Any other nominations for this position?
A quick point, Mayor. Now, getting in discussion any further, there's nothing forbidding this person from serving on multiple committees, right? Just to be clear to the public, just want anybody to think that if they get appointed to one, they can't serve on another. And just I respect both of your approaches here, but Councilman Prasad, you just curiously, you know that her first choice is to serve on Human Relations. You personally know that that's her first choice, and she's not interested in the other two at this time?
Well, it doesn't matter. If she wants to serve on several boards, more power
I just didn't
to
know
her.
if she has limited time, and I just...
But she
Whatever,
interviewed,
okay, that's fine.
She did not respond to the cable TV, but she did respond to the Human Relations, interviewed for it, and then has been recommended.
Okay.
So she's followed the process.
I got that. I just was wondering if you had spoken to her personally. I'm good.
Okay. Any other nominations for this position? Okay. One more thing, just my thing, before we go to the vote. I think it would be good for all of us, because we want to be on the same page to, even if a resume's been submitted, you may want to put it in conjunction with the position so we can match up the two in our minds. Ms. McCarthy, could you please pull the council up? Could you give me the name once more, Councilman?
Susie Ismail.
Okay. For Susie Ismail for our Human Relations Commission. Could you pull the council?
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Levine?
Yes.
Councilman Prasad?
Yes.
Councilman Regan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman?
Abstain.
Councilman Vasanella?
Yes.
Councilman Wright?
Yes.
Okay. Motion is carried. Thank you. Any other nominations for positions? Okay. We're now at item number 19, executive session, which we do not have. On my original agenda, I have a resolution 12 that was already done, right? We don't have to do that.
We're done.
Tax
No, we're done.
No.
Time to go home.
I just want to make, because I see, so I just want to make sure that that's...
Yeah, it was in the
That was
wrong
done.
place
Okay,
on the first
good.
one.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So it brings us to item number 20, which is adjournment, if there is a motion for such.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion is carried. We are adjourned.
Not a
Thank you.
problem.
Okay.
Hey, Lou?
Oh.
Did you mention anything about